with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It's Wednesday, June 26th, 2019. I'm Michael Brooks, and this is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We're broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On today's program, Murtaza Hussain, reporter for The Intercept. We're talking about an Iranian activist who wrote dozens of articles for right-wing outlets. Here's the secret. Turns out it wasn't a real person. It was a multitude of bots that were run by a group called the MEK, a group that has paid political figures from John Bolton to Howard Dean to help instigate an invasion of Iran. We'll connect that with the stakes of the current situation with Iran that the Trump administration has instigated over the past couple of years. Iran says that the door to diplomacy is closed permanently. Also, Jared Kushner, he finally had his bar mitzvah. No, excuse me. He unveiled his solution to the crisis in the Middle East. And it's basically bribe a handful of Palestinians and tell the rest of them to, in the words of a New York Times editorial recently, commit national suicide. Of course, nothing wrong with that, according to contrarian views. Of course, this plan not well received by the human beings of Palestine. In Queens, it looks like we have a great new DSA, district attorney. If you're a landlord, slumlord, or an employer, or an ICE official, be worried.
Hell yeah.
Excellent news with Tiffany Caban. Terrible news in Brazil, where the politically driven Supreme Court have rejected a habeas corpus bid by political prisoner Lula da Silva. We'll get into that. Oregon climate bill is dead, Senate Democrats say, after Republicans went to some pretty extreme measures to kill it. We'll talk about that. Robert Mueller is set to testify to Congress. Drama. Bernie Sanders is using his massive email list to warn immigrants about ICE raids, along with get funding to abortion clinics. Wayfair employees plan a walkout to oppose furniture sales to migrant detention facilities. An appeals court says the census case is not over, even if the Supreme Court upholds the citizenship question. And repeated mistakes in a phone record collection program led the NSA to shut down the controversial program. Nice to note there was a lot of mistakes there. Congressman Duncan Hunter used campaign funds to pursue affairs and was literally in bed with lobbyists. You know, the Politico guy that got to write that piece was super stoked. Democrats' monument lawsuit against Donald Trump can proceed if the federal judge rules. South Korean President Moon says that a new U.S.-North Korea summit possibly in the works. And the NRA has killed off, and the NRA has taken aim and fired at NRA TV. Too bad. Actually, we didn't even use them for clips anymore. That's how irrelevant they were.
Yeah,
but
maybe
they'll
Sam,
give us a couple days of Vic Berger material, so that'll be fun.
Maybe Sam will get some video equipment on the cheap.
That was Sam's very, very on-brand move to tweet out that he would like some video. There was some type of fire sale.
I can't believe Grant Stinchfield 1776 wasn't enough of a talent to build a television network around.
Which one was Grant's?
Stenchfield. Oh yeah.
that guy?
Brendan says shots fired.
Brendan with the off-camera
Oh,
quips.
damn.
Or shots not fired. Huh?
And serial. Yeah. Trigger locks put in place.
Trigger warning.
Wow.
There's also a McCain brunch angle to that story.
Very excited. The best thing that came out of NRA TV was definitely the Meghan McCain brunch angle. But let's start on a hopeful note in a great way. As of now, Tiffany Caban has an over 1% lead over the machine candidate Melinda Katz, who was endorsed by hack and blowhard Joe Crowley, who of course lost his seat to AOC and fuses together Wall Street machine politics. So if it stays over 1%, there will not be a recount, and Tiffany Caban will win this race. This is hugely significant. Obviously, first and foremost for the people of Queens, where all of a sudden you'll have a public defender, someone who actually cares about justice and humanity in a prosecutorial position. Look at some of the really significant things Krasner's done. Remember the photos of the cleaning shop in Philadelphia? I'm stoked to see those same feeds coming out of Queens. But also nationally. I mean, when people like Bernie Sanders put together serious packages on criminal justice reform, they're going to need DAs to cooperate and implement this stuff across the country. DAs races are absolutely some of the most important parts of electoral politics, and Tiffany Caban immediately becomes a vital national leader here. Here she is, at her victory last night in Queens.
And we can't have people sitting on Rikers simply because they cannot afford their bail. While the wealthy continue to be able to buy their constitutional right to the presumption of innocence. We cannot continue to criminalize mental health issues, substance use disorder. These are public health issues, and we must invest in treatment and support and not cages. Unlawfully evict tenants. And employers who steal wages destabilize entire communities. We built a campaign that said every community deserves justice. That every community deserves fair treatment under the law across racial and class lines.
Excellent. So this is an incredible breakthrough. Between her and Krasner and other candidates across the country, this is huge. I mean, this is going to be the actual material breakup of the vicious prison and punitive sentencing policies and prosecutorial policies that have dominated this country for decades. And it's also an opportunity, on the other hand, while you claw back and reverse those things, to actually really reinvent what this job actually is. Maybe this job is about going up against landlords. Maybe this job is about going up against companies and employers and other people that actually cause harm in communities. Huge amount of potential here. Huge victory. Awesome for Tiffany Caban and for Queens, and actually for all of us. There's definitely national implications from her win.
Hell yeah. And I just want to note the woman standing next to her up there is Bianca Cunningham, the co-chair of New York City DSA, which played a major role in canvassing for Caban, endorsing her very early. And I was really excited that we got to be a part of it in North Brooklyn. We're very close to Ridgewood, Queens, and we sent a lot of people to canvass.
Awesome.
We were a superpower. We are now a hyperpower.
Oh my God! How did you leak notes from the recordings from the DSA board meeting?
Whoops!
Wouldn't that be awesome if North Brooklyn DSA, like when people were out, like they're like tatted and earnest, and they're like, we need to get rid of prisons. We need to go talk to the community and then like privately they're just like, the next phase after Tiffany Caban is to accelerate our power position.
Michael, I told you that in confidence.
We need a mix of Machiavelli and Sun Tzu if we're going to get out of this pickle.
The only way to keep the race forward with Julius Salazar is to read from the Book of Rings, the samurai manual of warfare.
I'm not saying shit.
AOC, Salazar, and Caban are the deciding factor, I think, ultimately in all those races are these canvassing operations. So huge implications. And it's what's amazing about that type of grassroots effort is that's the logistics and maybe some of the like style is different, but at the end of the day there's not a massive difference in a broad principle of like going somewhere in the middle of like I've canvassed in places where you're literally on dirt roads and you walk, there might even be like a quarter mile between houses, and also like in multi-story buildings. And the bottom line is you knock on somebody's door and you tell them about the stakes, their stakes in the election and what they care about, what they're interested in, and why, hopefully who you're repping is going to deliver for them. And that's amazing for all of the complexities of campaigns and all of the other things that you have to do, that is such a huge deciding factor. And you can't do that without movements and organizations and candidates that actually represent something like Tiffany Caban.
Yep.
So that's a huge signal. And it's also a signal for people like now more and more people have been calling in and saying like they're doing things like running for their city council or whatever. Do that. Mm-hmm. Do that. Get involved in your local whatever, whatever you're drawn to. DSA, Justice Democrats.
Even if you think that the Democrats
Party
are going to work against you in some sort of Kabbalistic fashion, at least you make them do it, right? Like
sometimes
that goes at their resources.
And by the way, look, the Queen's Democratic machine is a pretty, we laugh now at people like Joe Crowley, but until he lost to AOC, that's a person who ran a machine in Queens and was a top Democrat nationally in the House, who had the sort of machine Democratic stuff, which is, depreciating because of changes in capital and so on, but also had a funnel from Wall Street and real estate. This dude, okay, you could say he was upset in a one-off. This is a personal rebuke to him. So the thing, among many other more important things. But so that's the other thing is sure, they'll work against you.
Oh, they definitely will.
There's no doubt, but it also could be a situation where you get a couple hundred people even could be enough to completely knock them off course. And amazingly enough, in a place like Queens, in New York City, which is obviously a massive city, you're literally talking about like 10,000 people, 11,000 people. It's not that many to take on and see, that there's a lot of glass jaws out there that haven't been properly challenged.
Mm-hmm. And the machine is still quite powerful. Like, I don't want to say that it's not. The four major unions in New York City endorsed her opponent, Katz, because, they're making a gamble. They don't want to go up against the machine. They know that if the socialist somehow wins, they're not going to punish them. But if they don't support the machine candidate and they win, they're absolutely going to punish them. But I hope between this and AOC, I hope some unions take a second look, and not necessarily for ideological reasons, although I want everyone to have a socialist ideology, but even just for pure reasons of power and self-interest, realize that it is in their self-interest to endorse candidates like Caban.
I mean, there's no doubt about it. And yeah, they won't be punished. And the structure of the policies Caban supports will obviously be way better for people who work, and so therefore unions. But, you know, you're not going to be in the room in the same way.
Yeah.
And start thinking, you know, and again, I sympathize why unions are thinking of like what small turf they can protect because they've been under assault for decades. At the same time, if you want to survive and you want to win the coming battles for survival, you actually need to think in broader terms in terms of what you actually can win and actually deliver for. And that's
Absolutely.
represented by candidates like Caban.
And one more thing, because I know we've had some conversations here, we've had conversations in DSA about how we are prison abolitionists. We don't just want decarceration. We don't just want to reform the system, right? We want to change it and replace it with a new one and a better one. So for that reason, some people were hesitant to support a DA because they are part of the carceral state, regardless of what they're going to do once they're inside of it. But I really think, like, I have to believe that we can walk and chew gum at the same time. We can support this DA because this is the tool that's available to us right now to improve people's material conditions in a very real way and not turn our back on our fellow New Yorkers and ourselves, while at the same time looking to a much more radical abolitionist horizon.
Definitely. Today's sponsor is Skillshare. And anyone who goes to skl.sh/Majority Report 4 is going to get 2 whole months of totally free access to Skillshare's entire library of super quality online courses and tutorials. Skillshare is a vibrant online learning community that offers courses in everything from design to video editing, photography, business, technology, cooking, meditation, and everything in between. There are Skillshare courses for everyone. You'll have no problem finding courses that will be useful to you in both your personal and professional life. Whether you want to sharpen your skills with something you already love doing, or you want to learn to do something totally new, Skillshare has you covered. They have courses for entrepreneurs, courses on computer coding, web development, personal nutrition, learning new languages, Photoshop, you name it. I've been starting to check out the Portuguese course, and I wish I was a more talented language student, but I'm finding it incredibly accessible and easy to use. So maybe that will help lead me in the right direction. And it certainly is the most usable interface for language learning I've ever attempted, by far. You can get 2 entire months of free access to every single course offered by Skillshare by going to skl.sh/Majority Report 4. Just think of everything you'll have at your fingertips for 2 whole months. Again, that's skl.sh/Majority Report 4. And I've put a link underneath this video if you're watching on YouTube. We'll be right back with Murtaza Hussain. Welcome back to the Majority Report. Michael Brooks here. Joining us now is Murtaza Hussain. He's a writer and reporter for The Intercept. Murtaza, how you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
It's always a pleasure. Murtaza, obviously, things have been escalating with Iran ever since Donald Trump took office, and this very hard right approach in terms of tearing up the deal, stepping out of our international obligations. At the same time, there's obviously some hesitation inside Donald Trump and within some kind of sectors of the far right around him, obviously. I mean, there's a lot of reporting that Tucker Carlson has actually been, pretty strongly lobbying against this. And it does seem to me that there's some parts of this authoritarian right-wing base that's war-weary. I think that that's an actual thing. And then of course, but you got Pompeo and Bolton and the usual, hard right establishment pushing forward on this disastrous course. What's your sort of read on where we're at from the U.S. side?
So Tucker Carlson, I think, is a standard bearer, or he's become a standard bearer for this Pat Buchanan-style conservatism.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not progressive in any sense.
Yep.
But it does endorse sort of a withdrawal of the United States from entanglements in the world, whether they be wars or alliances or any substantive engagement. Essentially, they'd like to turn the United States from an empire into an ethno-state, specifically a white ethno-state. And in advocating that position, there are certain tactical positions they take which align with progressive ideas now and then. But I think that the overall ideology that he's referencing to, especially when he's getting advice from Tucker Carlson, is a very hard right ideology. And
definitely, yeah.
It's a manifestation in domestic politics, if it ever reached the stage of ascendance, would be bad. It would be bad for progressive causes.
Without a doubt. But inside that relative context, right? I mean, and because even just like practically as an example, like, Ro Khanna teaming up with Matt Gaetz, right? One of the most just, extremist, sort of out of his mind members of Congress. What do you think, though, that in this context, that formation that people like Tucker Carlson represent, along with, if there can be, I mean, we see obviously leadership from Sanders and leadership from Khanna, there needs to be a lot more just sort of grassroots left anti-intervention, anti-war organizing on this. What do you think is it going to take to kind of pull us back from actually doing this, I guess, in this immediate context?
Yeah, I absolutely think that in the context of stopping a war, which seems to be imminent, a tactical alliance, very enthusiastic on this issue, is called for, it's warranted, and it's something which is certainly defensible. And I think that it's happened in the past too. Like, people I disagree with about everything, like Pat Buchanan, for instance, I find to be correct about issues like the Iraq War.
Right.
So, and he's not even just correct, he's a very eloquent opponent of imperialist wars. Ron Paul was very similar.
But can this be stopped, is what I'm saying? I mean, even beyond just the ethics of it, I mean, do you think that there's a way of stopping this?
Stopping
like a military action on Iran.
Oh, right. I find that the decision making in this administration is so unpredictable and it's so haphazard. The administration does not speak with one voice. Forget the government speaking with one voice, which is rare and almost never happens. By which I mean the political establishment, but the administration. Different individuals say radically different things on different days. The president himself says radically different things on different days. I find the prospect of a war to still be unlikely, although President Trump and his administration are really pulling the United States much closer than it's ever been before. I think that he knows that it will be a disaster and he does not want a war. But I also think that his advisors are trying to box him into a situation where a war becomes inevitable, whether he wants it or not.
The Bolton Pompeo wing you're talking about.
The Bolton Pompeo wing, and the thing that I think differentiates them and makes them more dangerous than Trump is that, unlike Trump, they've been thinking about this for years and years. John Bolton is wanting to have a war with Iran. It's been one of the major themes of his career. Donald Trump does not have very deep knowledge or beliefs about things other than his own popularity and getting reelected in 2020. And I think that when you're faced with people who are very knowledgeable in their own way and very committed to a certain ideological project, and you have someone like the president who seems very malleable and does not have strong knowledge or strong beliefs, there's a great risk that they can succeed in maneuvering him into something which he doesn't necessarily want.
What about the Iranian side? I mean, obviously, the Iranians have reacted very sharply, and it seems to me that at least to one sense that you sort of can maybe glean from Trump, because he does have no knowledge or understanding of any of these things, but that he doesn't get like the basic difference in terms of North Korea, that there was an innate goal in having the North Koreans have some type of direct meeting with an American president. That was a major mission. The Iranians don't share that mission. They don't need it. They actually have a lot of good relationships internationally, and they have a very different foreign policy making process and sort of presence on the world stage. So inside Iran, like, even as Rouhani and Zarif have had to shift after being the kind of like main proponents of diplomacy with the United States, and obviously Rouhani's used some very provocative language recently to talk about Trump, which is kind of funny. What is happening inside Iran? I mean, does this mean, is there like a right-wing tendency in Iran that, wants to close off any relations with the United States? What's happening there on that side of it, from your sense?
The engagement between the United States and Iran was very controversial inside of Iran for precisely the reason that you mentioned, that there are very powerful factions in the Iranian government who are against any negotiations with the United States. So to engage in that 2-year process of negotiating the nuclear deal required a tremendous amount of political capital on behalf of Rouhani and Zarif, and you could say the civilian wing of the Iranian establishment. And they had to make the argument that the United States will negotiate in good faith against the counter-argument, which is that the United States cannot be trusted and they're our enemy. And if you look at what happened since Trump came to office with the sudden annulment of the nuclear deal and the escalation of threats and sanctions, even though the Iranians have held up their side, the right wing in Iran has been validated. And to say that we're going to negotiate now on some totally new terms, there's just no political capital for that. And the Iranians, in a sense, is different from North Korea because there is internal politics. There are internal politics in Iran. There are factions. There are, the visible factions. And no one wants to be humiliated, and no one wants to lose face. And that's for that reason, I think it's extremely unlikely that there will be any negotiations unless the first step is that the Trump administration announces that it's returning to the nuclear deal. And it doesn't seem to me that Trump even understands what's in the nuclear deal or particularly cares, because he keeps emphasizing that his requirement for Iran is that they not develop nuclear weapons. And the point of the nuclear deal was to ensure that doesn't happen and to impose very strict surveillance on their nuclear energy program. So the idea that it doesn't surprise me at all that Zarif and these other people are taking a hard line towards Trump now because they don't have any choice.
Right.
There's no way they can engage with negotiations with him unless he starts from going back to the JCPOA. And he's not going to do that. And I think for that reason, we're not going to see any movement in terms of diplomacy, at least as long as this president is in power. And if someone else is elected in 2020 and they want to go back to the JCPOA, I think that the Iranians probably could do that. The issue is they really, even if they lose face, they need to go back to some sort of negotiation with the Americans at some point because economically their current situation is not tenable.
Right, but right, so that makes sense. I mean, the sanctions are hitting them really hard. People aren't getting vital things like even cancer medications. But like what, I mean, all Democrats, and I think there's obviously varying levels of actual commitment to this, and there's still a lot of kind of closeness among a lot of Democratic candidates to AIPAC and other, right-wing lobbies. But what if a Democrat, wouldn't it take more though? Like, wouldn't a next president have to say, not only are we going to restore this deal, but we actually have to make up for the complete sort of elimination of our credibility and your ability to trust us? Like, what are the safeguards that need to be put in place?
I think it's a very good question. I think that even if the next administration comes back and says that we will make a deal with you, we will return to our deal with you, what will happen with the next administration?
Right.
There's always this question. I think that this irreparable damage has been done to the United States' ability to do diplomacy by the behavior of this administration and its supporters, with very extremist behavior, because they've basically annihilated American credibility, or they have given the very strong impression that the U.S. is institutionally incapable of doing diplomacy, complex, sensitive diplomacy, such as the JCPOA. Because of their political system, they can't manage their side of the deal. So the rational perspective from the Iranian perspective is to hedge your bets, and even if in 4 years of the next administration you return to the deal and maybe some sanctions are lifted, you probably still move towards the nuclear weapon at some point. Every country in the world has gotten a very strong message that nuclear weapons are the only insurance. And you can ask Kim Jong-un or the Pakistani military, where Osama bin Laden was found in Pakistani territory, that it's a great insurance policy. You can ask Gaddafi or now potentially Iran what happens when you don't have a nuclear weapon.
Saddam Hussein.
And it's not to say that it's not to say that nuclear weapons are good or we should want to see a world with nuclear proliferation. It's just that because of their decisions, because of their destruction of nuclear diplomacy in this case, the U.S. has made that the rational choice for any regime that it's institutionally hostile towards.
So let's talk about this unbelievable piece that you reported a couple of weeks ago. And Iran, because I think this actually is very important, both in terms of the propaganda and the really extremist influences pushing war on Iran. But it's an Iranian activist wrote dozens of articles for right-wing outlets, but was he a real person? What is this, Murtaza? Break this down for us.
There was a very prominent, or I should say very loud, Iranian activist writer online, Heshmat Alavi, who is pushing for the most strict policies from the United States towards Iran, calling for heavy sanctions on Iran, calling for war with Iran obliquely, and also attacking anyone who comments on Iran and trying to do character assassination against them if they don't fit with this person, Heshmat's preferences for what should happen with U.S. policy towards Iran. Now, a few months ago, someone contacted me and told me that this individual doesn't exist. And not to say that they're not writing these articles for Forbes and the Daily Caller and the Federalist and several other right-leaning outlets and tweeting every day dozens of times, but that they are actually a team of people, 3 to 5 people, with a commander in a unit of an organization called the MEK, which is a Iranian opposition group, which probably has the distinction of being the one group that the Iranian regime and its other progressive opponents equally agree are horrible and are not a progressive alternative for Iran.
Why does everybody hate the MEK? Oh, sorry. Okay, yeah, go ahead. Yes.
So the MEK has its roots in the Iranian Revolution, but it was one of the factions which was defeated by the Ayatollahs who took power. Later on, they developed a cult-like personality, cult of personality around certain leaders who still lead the organization. But most controversially, perhaps, they sided with Saddam Hussein during the Iran-Iraq War, which was a very traumatic period in Iranian history, just because they were so focused on coming to power in Iran at any cost. They're a very authoritarian group and very shadowy, and they have ties to Saudis and John Bolton and many, many other people. So essentially, the MEK was behind this account, and they operate out of a base in Albania. It's very interesting. They have huge bills in Albania, presumably, and in D.C. where they do lobbying, and France. But they have this huge operation with hundreds of computers focused on spreading their message, commenting on every post related to Iran on social media, and also trying to get articles planted by Iranian activists, quote unquote. And Heshmat Alavi was a project, or is a project, of this organization and its online operations wing. And they succeeded in getting articles published in American publications. And they also, these articles are being read in the White House because the White House was citing Heshmat's articles to justify its own decision to exit from the nuclear deal.
What do we have any idea of how the MEK is funded, or how they get their money? I mean, they've paid John Bolton, they've paid Howard Dean, they've paid a bunch of other prominent people. Rudy Giuliani, I believe, has taken money from them. Where do they get their funding from?
Well, as you said, they have a lot of money. It's very strange because they should be, on Kickstarter mode. That's the level of popularity they have in the Iranian diaspora and in Iran. There's a lot of speculation. So there's speculation that they have friends in Saudi Arabia and the Gulf countries, speculation that neoconservatives or neoconservative institutions support them. And it's also known from defectors from the organization, which by some estimates has 15,000 members, that people who are part of the organization are effectively forced to give all their income or all their assets to the organization's leaders. So if you are in the MEK, they'll ask you to take a mortgage or take a second mortgage and give them the money from that. And your own credit doesn't matter because you're part of the organization. Sort of cult-like behavior. It's one of the big questions which remains about them. I would say probably the answer is all of the above when you think about how they get funds.
So you have a fake bot account which got published in Forbes, Federalist. It turns out it's not a real person. It's an online operation run by an extremist cult political project that has connections with, I think, also Israeli intelligence, the Gulf, neoconservatives. They are loathed across the board in Iran. And this literal fake news was partially laundered in the Trump administration's public justifications for generating the current crisis we're in with Iran.
That's right. And I think that there are probably more accounts like this and more fake people and fake authors out there. It doesn't mean that there are no real Iranian opposition activists or dissidents by any means. It just means that people have been taking advantage of this epistemological crisis which has been generated by the internet to manipulate public discourse. And the most troubling thing is not that, one of the many troubling things is that it was also engaging in very vicious harassment and character assassination against people who really are Iranian dissidents or critics of the government or supporters of diplomacy rather than war who are in the Iranian diaspora. This account, then this person is making life hell for them.
Right.
And what that does is it makes a genuine conversation about U.S. policy towards Iran more difficult. It makes it hard to, find a nuanced policy that accounts for human rights in Iran, but also does not lead to a war or immiserate people there through sanctions, and also deals in the areas where the U.S. does have legitimate competition with Iran. We can't have a nuanced discussion because people are flooding the discourse on the subject with all sorts of misinformation, hysteria, and propaganda. This is just the most vulgar example of that. Happens in all sectors.
Let's take a few minutes to talk about this Kushner plan that he just unveiled in Bahrain. It was boycotted by the Palestinians. I mean, basically, this is the big thing that we've been hearing from the beginning of the Trump administration, that on top of all of the oppression and insults of the Palestinians for so long, that now on top of everything else, Donald Trump has sort of put this ridiculous trust fund baby figure in charge of solving, well, we always say it's an intractable conflict. I mean, the truth is how to solve it is actually fairly simple, but there isn't because of the asymmetry of power and the dynamics, it hasn't been solved, and nobody's willing to put pressure on Israel, least of all, obviously, the Trump administration. But let's just play this clip of Kushner outlining it, and then I'll throw to you, Murtaza. I mean, if the implications weren't so bad for the Palestinian people, this is a very Iannucci, thick of it sort of vice thing. Like, let's put like the idiot kid who married the daughter of the president in charge of the most major area of failed diplomacy for decades. Here he is.
Numerous well-intended programs, investments, and plans have been derailed by violence, political instability, and the lack of a resolution to the long-standing core issues of this conflict. To be clear, economic growth and prosperity for the Palestinian people are not possible without an enduring and fair political solution to the conflict, one that guarantees Israel's security and respects the dignity of the Palestinian people. However, today is not about the political issues. We'll get to those at the right time. The goal of this workshop is to begin thinking about these challenges in a new way. Let's try to view this conflict and the potential of the entire region through a different lens and work together to develop a concrete plan to try and achieve it. For a moment, imagine a new reality in the Middle East. Imagine a bustling commercial and tourist center in Gaza and the West Bank where international businesses come together and thrive. Imagine the West Bank as a blossoming economy full of entrepreneurs, engineers, scientists, and business leaders. Imagine people and goods flowing quickly and securely throughout the region as economics become more integrated and people become more prosperous. This isn't a stretch. This is actually the historical legacy of the Middle East, specifically of Gaza and the West Bank. It is a legacy of great cultures coming together as a center of commerce, innovation, and prosperity.
I just want to add, I mean, this was at the Peace and Prosperity Workshop hosted in Bahrain in Manamwa, which I'm totally butchering for some reason. And as Christine Lagarde, who is, of course, the managing director of the IMF, she said that the peace was missing from the economic workshop. I mean, Murtaza, what are your thoughts on this farce?
Yeah, so essentially, Kushner is trying to substitute an economic solution for a political solution, although in his speech, in his remarks there, he did say something about a political solution, but he didn't say anything about what it would be. That's the main problem here. He once bragged about the fact that he doesn't read books about the subject, or he dismissed the ideas of reading books about the subject. And I think it really shows in his analysis or his proposals, because they're totally divorced from reality. And they also don't make any sense, because he's been spending a year or longer, him and other Trump administration officials, just heaping insults on the Palestinians or putting pressure on them, taking subjects like Jerusalem off the table completely. And now you're having this conference, which, presumably you should have built all this trust with them by this point. It doesn't make any sense. It's just it's a completely ham-handed attempt at, I don't even think it's an attempt at diplomacy. It just seems like trolling.
Right.
His analysis is like, I think the average person could probably do a better job at trying to solve this issue. Someone who doesn't have any understanding of the issue at all. I think that he's worse than that at trying to resolve the issue. And I would give him a chance if I thought that he had a real idea. He just doesn't seem to have any idea.
The PLO, of course, rejected it. But one other thing I want to touch on before you go, though, is this is a real testament to this incredible linkage between the Trump administration and MBS in Saudi Arabia, because the Saudis, who I don't think, obviously there's never been a sort of sincere concern for Palestinian rights or interests, but even going back to the old Saudi initiative of like the Bush era, which basically would have been an actual two-state solution in exchange for a broader Middle Eastern recognition of Israel, that still meant at least some actual autonomy and political gains for the Palestinians. In this case, the Saudi minister on the ground who was at the workshop said that they think that the plan could succeed. I truly believe it can be done, and if the people do believe, then it can be done, said Mohammed al-Sheikh at the workshop. And the way to make people on the ground believe it is to give them hope, and this will be sustainable, and that this will be everlasting, and that ultimately there will be prosperity and there will be sustained development, and this sort of motivational globalization speak. But I mean, what do you make of that level between Saudi and the Trump administration, and maybe even potentially, I mean, obviously the backdoor between Saudi Arabia and right-wing forces in Israel?
I actually think that the 2002 initiative, which was reiterated in subsequent years, was actually a pretty good plan for ending the conflict.
Right.
And I think it's very disappointing that Israeli leaders didn't respond to it, because on paper, it seems to give everybody an acceptable outcome. It gives recognition to Israel and political, economic integration with the rest of the region, which I think is a good thing in the context of a peace deal. It gives the Palestinians independence and a share of Jerusalem and so forth. Unfortunately, so much has changed since 2002, and mostly for the negative. The region has just completely gone into chaos, and now the Gulf states, their concern is with Iran and with staying in power economically, managing the economics, staying in power in terms of managing their own population.
Right.
They are not interested in the Palestinians anymore. They have bigger fish to fry in their own perspective, and they would like to work with the Israelis more openly on the issues that they have shared interests. There's probably some resentment towards the Palestinians now, or just dismissal of them. So the 2002 deal was a non-starter for Israel in 2002. So there's no indication that they're going to change their mind now. There's no reason for them to.
Of course.
And, now, given that reality, the Saudis still want to work with them, so let's try to push through the deal of the century, the Kushner plan. The thing is, the one thing the Palestinians will say, and the Palestinian national movement has made many mistakes over the decades, not flawless. But one mistake that I think they'll never make is that they're not going to surrender. They will always continue suffering, regardless of how much pressure is put on them, until they achieve their goal, which is self-determination.
Right.
So this whole idea that Kushner and MBS have of putting a gun to their head and hoping they just surrender and accept a payment in lieu of statehood, it's never going to happen. And it shows that they don't read any books, because anyone can tell you that.
Murtaza Hussain, reporter for The Intercept. I really appreciate your time as always, man. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Take care. All right, folks. We are going to get to the fun half. Open up IMs and lines and blah, blah, blah. There was I don't know if you did this on purpose, but last night on TMBS, when we have music breaks, we have these great interstitials from DJ Danarchy, and Matt plays a lot of drops over them from the sort of world of idiots like Rubin. And you played Dave Rubin's I really think the left hates gamers. And you timed it. Someone pointed this out. It was so funny because you timed it where one piece of music was ending, and so then you had there was probably 3 seconds of silence, and then the next track came on, and he's just still going they want, whether it's an RPG or a game, they want to solve problems. I don't know if I'm doing justice.
Accomplish something in a video game, you have to keep trying to succeed. Yes, can you go to GameFAQs, or can you get the cheat code and all that stuff? You do. But it really is about you figuring out how to do all this stuff. And that, to me, sort of shows why the media, and especially the leftist media, hates games now, or hates gamers. They don't like people who solve problems.
His guest
is this a bridge too far, or am I onto something?
I don't know. I haven't really thought. I have to think about it. I haven't really thought about it.
I think there's something there. Gamers want to get shit done. Whatever world you're in, whether you're playing a sports game or an adventure game or an RPG or whatever, you're building something, you're accomplishing something. You may have to have teammates and all do it. You don't want people to help you do everything and cheat for you.
You gotta play to your base.
Oh man, he's so dumb.
It really explains a lot when you think about it.
It does. I mean, it's definitely not something I had thought about.
When I was playing Red Dead Redemption 2 and learning how to be a cowboy, learn how to do all these things, like saddle horses and break them in and you
didn't want somebody else to do that for you.
Yeah, and
you didn't want to cheat.
Track big game. I'm turning my back on my life as a leftist when I'm doing this.
That's always been my big concern with you when you say that you like to load up a bong and play like 5 hours of video games. I'm just, I'm like, Matt, Jesus. Is there a problem technically, guys? All right. Okay.
Fixed it.
Let's go to the fun half. Become a member of the Majority Report today. Majority.fm/become a member. That's how this show happens. That's how you get everything from Iran war prevention, hopefully, to Rubin dunking.
To IDW harassment.
Your words.
Bullying.
I accept
it. Bully the right people.
There's a difference between form and content.
Indeed. Yesterday on TMBS, we had an excellent show. Brian Mayer. We went deep, of course, which we'll talk about in the second half of this new immense injustice. I mean, Lula still being imprisoned even after the revelations of the incredible corruption of the Lava Jato team. We talked about that, but also the broader geostrategic context, linking it with the NSA spying on Petrobras, U.S. reversal of the pink tide. Then Harvey K. came in. We talked about the history of A. Philip Randolph, why the March on Washington was about jobs and justice, and the strategic necessity of Sanders to claim the FDR legacy, and the commentary on the state of play, state of crisis, but state of potential opportunity in Iran, in the Sudan, and how Omar al-Bashir, who used to be an international villain, and the Janjaweed militia that committed crimes against humanity in Darfur, became partners with European member states in keeping migrants from crossing the Mediterranean. This weekend strategy session with labor organizer, strategist, author Bill Fletcher Jr. on the progressive movement and the Democratic Party and how to actually build socialism. Patreon.com/TMBS. Michael Brooks Show on YouTube. And please, you do not want to miss, so click there. It's right on the site. Get your tickets to the August 24th Michael Brooks Live Show in Chicago, Illinois. Jamie.
This week on the Antifada, we speak with the prolific poster known as Chad Vigorous, a.k.a. Pretty Bad Lefty on Twitter.com. Such a smart guy, such a good talker. We had a wide-ranging conversation, including we talked about his ethnographic studies of white music. We asked which white artists speak to him the most and why.
Can we get some examples?
Willie Nelson.
He likes like gutter post-grudge.
Oh, that makes total sense.
Like Creed and Hoobastank. And like anything where people are yelling at you because he likes to lift to it. He does like Nine Inch Nails, so we can bond over that.
Wow.
Yeah. And we talk about the infuriating and depressing debate over what is or isn't a concentration camp, as well as liberalism's tendency toward rhetorical chicanery rather than actually addressing the issues surrounding race and class in U.S. society. So check it out. It's out now.
Awesome. Matt.
Literary hangover, we talk about Nathaniel Hawthorne's The Blithedale Romance, and among other things, we talk about why the utopian socialists didn't really work out, because basically it was this thing where you would have to have enough money, so you had to be bourgeois in the first place, to buy property somewhere, and then you start a commune and try to lead a revolution by example of how you like organize your day, for instance, and turns out that the global market is a bit too tough.
It's a very tough deal. See you in the fun half.
left is best. Jamie and I may have a disagreement.
Yeah, you can't just say whatever you want about people just because you're rich.
I have an absolute right to mock them on YouTube.
He's up there buggy whipping like he's the boss.
I am not your employer.
You know, I'm tired of the negativity.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to upset you. You're nervous, you're a little bit upset, you're riled up.
Yeah, maybe you should rethink your defense of that, you fucking idiots.
We're just going to get rid of you.
All right.
But dude, you want to smoke this joint?
Yes.
Do you feel like you are a dinosaur?
That's some good shit.
Exactly. I'm happy now.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win-win.
Oh, hell yeah.
Now listen to me. 2, 3, 4, 5 times. 847-906-501-457-238-56-27. 1/2. 5 8s. 3.9 billion.
Wow.
He's the ultimate math nerd.
Don't you see?
Why don't you get a real job instead of spewing vitriol and hatred, you left-wing Limbaugh?
Everybody's taking their dumb juice today.
Come on, Sammy.
Dance, dance, dance.
Rand Paul.
I had my first post-coital scene with a woman. I'm hoping to add more moves to my repertoire. All I have is the dip and the swirl.
Fine, we can double dip.
Yes, this is a perfect moment.
No.
Wait, what?
You make under $1 million a year. You're scum. You're nothing.
Excuse me? Fuck you, you fucking liberal elite. I think you belong in jail.
Thank you for saying that, Sam. You're a horrible, despicable person.
All right, gonna take a quick break. I want to take a moment to talk to some of the libertarians out there. Take whatever vehicle you want to drive to the library. What you're talking about is jibber jabber.
Classic. I'm feeling more chill already.
Good. Donald Trump can kiss all of our asses.
Hey Sam, hey Andy, you guys ready to do some evil?
Hitler was such an idiot.
That guy might be a Nazi.
Agree.
No.
Death to America.
You.
Yes.
Wow.
Wow, that's weird. No way! Unbelievable. This guy's got a really good hook. Throw our hands up.
Ooh.
Wow.
But Sam, I gotta get off.
No worries. Let's. I want to just flesh this out a little bit. I mean, look, it's a free speech issue. If you don't like me,
Hey, shut up!
Thank you for calling into the Majority Report. Sam will be with you shortly.
Welcome to the fun half. Michael Brooks here, along with the team. What the hell is going on with the phones? There's always a problem with the phones, I feel. Let's start with this piece of sound. It's really powerful. These were, what number is this on the list? The one we have? Oh, number 4. So, as we know, one of the great crimes that were among many that were committed in and by this country was the Japanese internment. And the Japanese Americans during World War II were put in concentration camps, because that's the term. That's what it means.
Camps you concentrate people in.
Camps you concentrate people in. As an example, refugees or people from a specific ethnic group. It's something that the United States government has apologized to the Japanese community about. I remember I actually knew an amazing couple growing up who were both interned as young people. I believe she in California and he in Hawaii. But also on the right, on the sort of proto-fascist right, there's actually a lot of work, even going back to the Bush administration, of laying the groundwork of justifying this crime. Now, of course, we have children who are being tortured. We have children who are being kidnapped. We have children who are dying in ICE custody. There's people like Chuck Todd and others who want to play pedantry games. There's people like Meghan McCain who think it's another opportunity to talk about their dad, which I'm almost getting to the point of like, I don't know, just go to a therapist. But there's other people like these incredibly principled Japanese American advocates who are linking their own experience in the crime of internment with the crime of this terrorism aimed at children by ICE and the Trump administration. And so these Japanese American activists were taking the lead on this protest that was, I believe it was taking place in front of a facility. There were children that were going to be moved from to a camp in Oklahoma, I believe this is. And these former Japanese internment victims were speaking about that. And there is a guy who, we talk about form and function. I don't think that everybody who takes these, I think there's plenty of people who go for these jobs, frankly, because there's not many good jobs to be had. But there's also people, and then there's a structural bureaucratic problem. And I'm really not interested in demonizing people for holding different jobs. I think it's a self-defeating strategy, and I think it's mostly moralistic and annoying. That all being said, this guy has all of the traits of a milk monitor asshole bully. And the fact that they stand up to him is very satisfying.
Yeah, I just want to note first the hashtag that they have on their shirts, which is "Stop Repeating History."
Right.
And
Please.
also, like Michael said, this isn't about this individual guy. I think look at this as a visual metaphor for like basically what political struggle might look like for the next 50 years. A military guy saying this, and these people react the exact way that they should.
Exactly.
And subsequently Santa Fe, New Mexico. My mother and I were incarcerated at the Puyallup Fairgrounds called Camp Harmony, and later in Minidoka, Idaho.
You cannot protest on Fort Sill. If you want to protest, you have to go across the street, the highway, and that needs to happen right now. Let's go, let's go, let's go, now, today.
My name is Chizu Omori. Saying a couple more statements, please.
No, ma'am, you may not. You may. Again, I will say it. This is the last time. You cannot protest on Fort Sill. You need to move across the street now.
Empty words.
Chizu, were you going to make a statement?
Go ahead, Chizu. Yes.
Apparently you didn't hear what I said.
I'm sorry, sir.
You need to move today, now, right now. Move.
Otherwise, what will happen?
I don't know. No, I'm not going to arrest you, but you need to move now.
Thank you. Then we're not going to move.
Yes, you're going to move.
Yeah, no, we're not.
If you're not going to arrest us, we're not going to move.
I'm getting on my walkie-talkie.
Yes, I spent 3.5 years at Poston, Arizona, an American concentration camp.
That's it.
So a woman who was in an internment camp,
Yeah.
concentration camp. So
Right. Oh, that's also a good point. So they called his bluff. Obviously it's satisfying. I mean, the guy just, it's as simple as if that guy wasn't a total bully, an asshole, an embarrassment, there would be the attitude of basically like, you can't say in words, but I've been in situations where the guy's basically, and maybe they're being insincere, but it makes a difference, where it's like, look, the subtext is, I have a boss. I'm being told to do this. I understand I'm being an asshole. I might even understand that you people are totally right, but I got to go through the motions on this. That guy's on his own authority trip with his walkie-talkie and his stupid gadgets. And it's like, fuck you. What are you going to do? All right, you're not going to arrest us. We're going to go back to being a moral conscience. You can go back to being a joke and a bully.
you can either use force or you can get GTFO. Let us do our speeches.
Yeah, and shout out to that lady for making the connection between different people's struggles, and negative shout outs to right-wing Jews who want to police the boundaries of what you can refer to as a concentration camp. I mean, it goes against everything I was taught in my own Jewish upbringing, everything I was taught about the Holocaust. When we say never again, we don't just mean never again for Jews. We mean never again for anyone.
No, Jews in Germany specifically. So as an example, if you wanted to do it, if some Jews found themselves in, say, Zanzibar, well, you couldn't use the word concentration camp. We need to be very specific. It involves Germany, or when you're agitating for any war you want in the Middle East, or if you're justifying killing Palestinian children. And besides that, you never use those words.
It's
said
too real.
I know. They exist. Speaking of those kinds of people, and they, because identity is not an essential quality, those kinds of people can be Meghan McCain. So hold on one second. I'm sorry. Those people can be Meghan McCain. So Meghan McCain, who is one of the great idiots of our time, had an incredible exchange with her fellow members of The View. And does it surprise you that Meghan McCain has a narcissistic take about children being kidnapped? Of course not. Does it? Well, no parts of this individually should or would surprise you, but it still is hysterical when it all comes together. Let's check this out.
It's a complete and total humanitarian crisis, and we don't have the infrastructure to deal with it. Kevin McCarthy, who's the minority leader, said every member of Congress should be required to go to the southern border, and see the crisis for themselves, and they should also be required to see what's happening in these detention centers. I just want to say one quick thing. I saw, and apparently, by the way, me saying, can I say one quick thing, is now becoming a parody. That's just how I talk. It's one of my tics. I'm sorry. Calling these places torture facilities, I understand it is a humanitarian crisis. It's horrific to detain, and you said.
First of all, torture facilities. Who's using that?
That's the other thing, is that nobody has actually used that. Like, if we want to be precise and definite and definitive here, honestly, look, if somebody called it a torture facility, I have no problem with it. That I think, yes, if you're literally torturing children definitionally. So if you want to use that term, I'm certainly not going to be the pedant who's going to whine about it. But people are calling them concentration camps because that's what they are. Again, we'll go back to the Merriam-Webster dictionary. But you're right. So first, what she's doing is the Kevin McCarthy tweet. Now, Kevin McCarthy is part of the party that's doing this to people, and this isn't a crisis. And in fact, when go and look up videos. By the way, 2015, I went so hard at Obama for border policies at that point for people. There was a crisis in 2015. They were sending people back in that context as well. This is different, but there is a long history of barbarism and inhumanity at the border. This acceleration is totally generated by the Trump administration. There's no border crisis whatsoever. So this is actually a proper use of the phrase virtue signaling. She wants to virtue signal that she's not a complete sociopath and grotesque monster, and she has a problem with children dying in ICE custody, while caping for the people that are making this happen. And now, after making up that people are calling it torture facilities, which almost nobody is doing, we get to the real fixation of Meghan McCain's life. And I'm starting to see some parallels here potentially between the way Donald talks.
And I just want to make one point about that. Like, torture facilities would be an accurate but polemical use of language.
Correct.
Concentration camps is just literal usage
That's
of that
an
term.
objective use of language. And again, rare people aren't using torture camps. But here we go. This is Meghan McCain's fixation in life.
I saw, and apparently, by the way, me saying, can I say one quick thing, is now becoming a parody. That's just how I talk. It's one of my tics. I'm sorry. Calling these places torture facilities, I understand it is a humanitarian crisis. It's horrific to detain, and you said, people in jail get soap and people in jail get toothpaste. But I know what a torture facility looks like. I've been to one. I know, listen to me, excuse me. When you have a facility whose specific purpose is to torture people, that is not what's going on. Yes, it's inhumane, but there is a big difference between the Hanoi Hilton and what's happening at the border right now.
We should be less concerned about what we're calling them than what is happening inside of them.
But hyperbole,
I don't think it matters what we're calling them.
Hyperbole.
Inside of them.
Well,
If anybody's doing hyperbole, we can't actually talk about the matter at hand.
Yeah, exactly. Hyperbole gives me an opportunity to talk about my father and distract from the fact that the administration that I won't admit to supporting but will protect my trust fund is killing children. So I think that's exactly what we're going to talk about.
I know about torture facilities. I've been to one. I go to one every day where I have to sit at a table with that bitch Joy Behar.
I am literally tortured right now being with all of these women who are shouting at me when my father literally he was burning them, whatever, what say you, was there. So anyways, I don't even have time for this.
Dying inside of them.
Well,
we shouldn't play semantics for what we're calling them.
Well,
we should care about the dead kids that have come out of them.
Well, my father couldn't lift me above his head as a child because of his torture wounds.
Oh,
so I do think hyperbole is important.
But that was a war, and they were grown.
But torture, I had such a problem with it. A torture facility. I'm not saying it's not a good thing.
Let me say this one thing.
What do I say? Wait. It's a joke now.
What is it she always says?
It's a joke now. I don't know.
On Twitter.
It's like a thing now. Okay. One more thing. Can I say one thing?
First of all, it may not have intended to be a torture facility, but has turned out to be torturous. Okay? That's number one. Number two, this was used, separating these children was used as a deterrent at the border to keep them from coming in. It hasn't been working. It doesn't work. So he doesn't even know what he's doing.
But I think the
hyperbole, influx.
But I think hyperbole, when you're saying this is a concentration camp, this is a torture.
Okay, we finally get to the real thing.
So now we're to the real thing, which is the accurate use of language. Man, she is so disgusting.
Hyperbole, but I think hyperbole, when you're saying this is a concentration camp, this is a torture center, it's when you get people to stop paying attention, and what is happening is horrific.
Contraire, mon ami. I believe that AOC, at AOC calling
touche, Joy Behar. I mean, I don't speak French.
I believe that AOC calling it a concentration
if by you don't,
camp.
if you want to do your, yes, by the way, I hope that her doing that was a way of calling you stupid because you are stupid.
It's cute.
People should absolutely let you know how stupid and narcissistic you are.
It's cute that she thinks the thing she's being parodied for is her catchphrase, "Can I say one thing?" when it's clearly my father, my father, my father.
You know, the thing was with someone like Meghan McCain, who is so totally there through her own merit and is not a product of being a trust fund baby in an oligarchy, and is somebody that whatever you think of her opinions is obviously very well briefed, well researched, and intelligent. You just got to go and find something petty like that, like a kind of basic speech tick, because there's not much else you could make fun of her about. Which is why I was actually shocked by this. So as we all know, and is my board up? NRA TV is been shut down. Siffy. And so NRA TV was, I mean, it was embarrassing because it was like, even in an amply generous, like, if you're in right-wing media, you're in an amazing position because you can get funded by any type of corporation or oligarch because you're there to be a mouthpiece for their agenda. And then you have a pretty significant amount of rubes and idiots who are easy marks to, sell shit to or whatever. The fact that even in that ecosystem, and the NRA is the NRA. I mean, the NRA is still, for all of its major internal problems, is the domestic arms industry lobby group, and something that, NRA has played a role in the resurgence of the far right in Latin America. They were so bad at NRA TV that we did, I don't know, like a handful of clips on them. I mean, like, it just was boring. The talent was not good.
It was one step above those guys who just record themselves in their SUV with like a Packers hat on.
Just like, hey, this is Hank. I'm here in my Suburban. Heard that Barack Obama wants to take my hunting knife. Well, guess what? Not today or ever. Barack Hussain Obama. Those guys at least have more charisma.
Look, I saw this thing on a website. I don't know, what's it called again? Project Veritas. It says Ilhan Omar married her brother to get into America. Now we're going to look into this. I'm going to read it slowly for 40 minutes and then I'll relay some of the information to you.
Akbar al-Zahid was there in Tomb tomb. So sorry, that was the other paragraph. So those guys are actually a lot more charming so than NRA TV. So basically, NRA TV is done. And what is this tweet?
This is just the announcement.
Oh, this is just the announcement. So very sad.
NRA TV has shut down production.
Oh man, what a bummer. So you know, this is hilarious. Who cares? Maybe we'll get some of their equipment. And so Meghan McCain, who several years ago, Meghan McCain, it's interesting because you know her big brand was like, you know, it's always obviously been 98% my dad is John McCain, but it used to be like, hey, like as long as you don't like tax my trust fund, like I know like gay people and we can like go shopping. And now I think under Trump, and because you know at the end of the day, like, you know, clearly like on her panel, it's like, I don't want to be bothered with dead kids. I want to be given money. As that position has become less tenable just around and people like Joy, who are not radicals, but are just like, Jesus, I can't, how much longer do I have to like indulge this bullshit? Meghan McCain is reaching out, I think, and making sure that her bona fides are strong with, you know, the always, you know, hard fanatical right. People like Dana Loesch, who I think Dana Loesch was on NRA TV and is an NRA spokesperson.
She's also a big Vince Foster conspiracy theorist.
Dana Loesch, very smart. So she's got a great brain. So Meghan McCain tweeted at Dana Loesch. Dana Loesch is a brave fighter who believes in, is a brave fighter for what she believes in. And I look forward to whatever she does in her next endeavor. She also has a husband I respect greatly at Chris Loesch. I would just like to add parenthetically.
Step off, Meghan McCain.
Yeah,
God.
first of all, easy now. And secondly, I believe Chris Loesch, if I'm not mistaken, has collaborated with Steven Crowder on one of the most unfunny things I've ever seen in my life.
Look at that facial hair.
Oh wait, no, that's not him. I don't know Chris. I thought Chris Loesch was somebody else. All right, I don't know who Chris Loesch is.
He's just a man devoted to Jesus, his wife,
his children, his children, and his freedom and his country. He's a wife guy. He's got the facial hair of a wife guy.
Indeed.
All right. Well, Chris Loesch is a nice guy. And by the way, Meghan, please, you're not going to be able to pull a Chris Loesch. Okay. Yeah.
I mean, she's already got a what's his name?
Yeah. Stick to some
Domino.
Stick to some sad.
Ben Domino's.
What is he? A Federalist writer?
Ben Domino's is a Federalist plagiarist.
Stick to some plagiarist who you had like a nervous breakdown that like. She was probably scared Trump was going to actually lead us to like nuclear war and her trust fund would be taken away that way. So she married him because of an anxiety attack. And now like, it's like, oh my God, if he has a nuclear war, then like my money will go elsewhere. So then, so that's what she tweeted. Dana Loesch responds, not step the fuck off of my husband. No, Dana Loesch responded this way. Go back. Okay. But Dana Loesch, we're going to read you the whole thread, but Dana Loesch responded politely, but with not a lot of interest. I appreciate your friendship over the past couple of years and your fighting spirit. I'm glad I got to know you. And then I love how like the right wing clearly has their own like Twitter pests.
I don't even know if this is a right winger.
Who knows who this person is? It's just classic pestiness.
Yeah, it is very pestiness.
Which is funny because, and in fact, to at GoGo SF's credit, this is super funny. Dana Loesch, we're not the only ones we're not the only ones with Meghan McCain impressions around here.
And we're not the best
not
ones
just
either.
Jamie and I. No, look, I think my Meghan McCain impression is good, but this is also I had no idea Dana Loesch had any talent. Check this out.
All women because they're women. Criticism is sexist. And I told her I was impressed that she actually picked up on the fact that I was insulting her. Did you search her last name? She replied, at D-Lash, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that we're both Republican, albeit very different women, and there should be some level of support. You have continued to say negative things about me and like take cheap shots, and I don't understand the point. As I told her, I'm not a Republican. I'm a conservative. And I don't get along to just move along. And I also brought up all of the past instances where she has taken pot shots at Sarah Palin and Bristol Palin and Michelle Bachmann and any other woman Meghan McCain seems to view as a threat to steal that Republican mantle from her.
Why do we want? Okay, all right.
They're
geez.
both bad.
Yeah, but the impression was so fun. She nailed that.
It was, but I like how much like being on the top woman in conservative media, like
It's important
yeah,
brand
it's important to
space,
them.
man. It's important brand space.
McCain does make it very easy for people, I gotta say.
It was a good impression.
It's so funny too that Meghan McCain's doing what like all media people do when like all their friends get laid off and they're like, hey, this is a great person, you should hire them. Like Dana Loesch is gonna have any trouble finding another right wing like funder to just bankroll her.
Yeah, she thinks she's being so generous and helpful with her fake friend.
Hey, pay her, Meghan.
Hire her as a research assistant. Wait, is there more? Oh, okay. Calvin. Okay, so, this is one where, like, I'll obviously say whatever, but I don't, like, I would never at Meghan McCain, right? Like, I just have etiquette about things. But this guy, Calvin, who actually has a check mark, so that's really escalating.
Blue check privilege.
He says, I am an annoying gay internet person. Well, you know what, Calvin? You're living up to your name here, because Calvin jumps into the thread with, holy shit, your impression of Meghan's voice is actually spot on.
Oh, Calvin, you beautiful, messy bitch.
And now Meghan McCain, who I would frankly not be surprised if she responded to Go-Go SF, is dragged in. And she says the following. Remember when you publicly begged me to have brunch with you? I still haven't forgotten that shit. And you look at this, and if you have any empathy, you just think, damn, the poor producers on The View might have an even extra annoying day with this brat. Ugh, what a bummer. All right, you're calling from a 314 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from? 314, are you there?
314. How's it going, buddy?
All right, you're out. You are calling from a 817 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from? (817) All right. I'll call back in. Sorry.
Sometimes I worry that we're going to reach the singularity soon and the robots are going to kill us. And then we try to use the phones
Thank
here.
You for
and I'm
calling
like,
into the majority
you know what?
report.
Maybe technology's
Please
not there
use
yet.
No speaker phone and have your one
I think
comment
we'll be
or
all right.
question ready.
Hello,
Listen for
this is
Sam
Mitt
to call
Romney.
out your area code. Sam will be with you shortly.
Hello, this is Mitt Romney. I don't even see myself here. God. All right. Producer Lauren, did you know that Dave Rubin was on Tucker Carlson's show last night? Well,
in fact, we did.
Yeah, I think we caught this. Well, I guess we'll play this in a second. While Tucker was safely ensconced in Tokyo to complain about the suppression of YouTube, does Rubin fulfill some sort of gay quota that for Tucker that peaked when he had Caitlyn Jenner on as a disloyal log cabin Republican? Do you know why Randy Rhoads wasn't allowed to podcast from tonight's debate? Lash the Fash. I don't know the answer to any of those questions, but we do have this clip. And again, we all know what Tucker Carlson is, but it is funny to me that, Tucker clearly understands that Dave is not the sharpest operator. So there's always a funny tenor to their interactions because Dave is like slobbering with excitement that he's doing a cable hit. And Tucker's like, the same way with Prager. Like, hey, you're the gay guy who co-signs on all of the bad things. That's great. But there's always that little Tucker like, wow, this guy's really stupid.
Do I really have to walk you through all this?
Walk through this? You can't just do this yourself? All right, let's check this out.
Dave Rubin hosts the Rubin Report on YouTube. The Google whistleblower says that his channel is one of the channels that Google's algorithms work to suppress. Watch this.
And right after that happened, a lot of the content creators started.
Right after the Masonic Lodge meeting happened.
I was going to say, this is the difference you could tell between Tucker Carlson and Dave Rubin. That in the Tucker Carlson production process, they were like, why don't we cut out the Masonic Lodge meeting part of the video?
Creators started to get demonetized, and their videos started to get deranked. I'm talking about Dave Rubin.
Who would demonetize me?
Tonight. What do you make of that, Dave, when you hear that?
Tucker, I guess you didn't know when you came to my house to do my show, to my little garage studio, and you played with my dog and saw my backyard chickens. You didn't know what a crazed right-wing radical I was. So I'm glad that we've gotten that out there. Look, of course.
Tucker Carlson is a crazed right-wing radical, so why would he have a problem socializing with one? What do you... This guy is so stupid, it's breathtaking. All right, keep going.
So I'm glad that we've gotten that out there. Look, of course... This is complete nonsense. I mean, we've discussed this many times. I am an old school liberal, so this is not like I'm some far lefty and I'm not some far righty. I'm a pretty moderate guy. I've tried to build some bridges here. And even that now is becoming too extreme for what Google and YouTube are allowing to happen. One of the things that I've done that I'm most proud of, actually, is I've had conservatives on my show.
We know you're proud of that, Dave.
Definitely, I know that. It's brilliant.
You've had conservatives on like Tommy Sotomayor and Stefan Molyneux.
Yeah, the way you build bridges is you have Tommy Robinson on. You go like, really? The Muslims have their own quarter of the city?
And why would the far left let you just be and let you live a little bit,
I don't
Tommy?
understand. They don't want you to talk about the brain
They don't want you to be part of this new center we're building.
There's this new center where people talk about terrorizing migrants off the coast of the Aegean. Is that how you say it? Aegean. That's a fun word.
Is I've had conservatives on my show like you, like Dennis Prager, Ben Shapiro, etc., and I've treated you guys with respect and decency, and that really is what the mainstream media and sort of the New York Times, CNN crew doesn't want people to see. They just want to create a caricature of all of you guys. So that's sort of why they're coming after me. But I will say this: just moments before we started here, I just got notified that Susan Wojcicki, who's the CEO of YouTube, she actually followed me on Twitter. So.
Awesome. So this is where Tucker like is starting to get his little bloated squint face, or he's just sort of like, shouldn't you be running a little bit more mileage out of this? You're so excited. You're so desperate for any kind of social validation that one YouTube follow is going to completely puncture the segment. Jesus Christ, you're an empty-headed, vacuous moron.
I wolfed down my last rolls of sushi to get back to the studio to interview this moron.
I'm still trying to get eel washed down my throat. I thought we were going to go dunk off and make some 7-year-olds freaked out about Google supporting the Angela Davis agenda. And this idiot gets a follow on Twitter, and all of a sudden he's not even upset for the segment. God, this guy's dumb.
I could have been honorary first mate on a whaling boat this afternoon, and instead I'm in a studio talking to this moron.
I've got over 1 million subscribers on there, and I don't have as much of it as an email address of someone at YouTube, but maybe I am starting to make some headway now. And, quickly to your point on where sort of libertarians are at right now, I think there's an interesting moment here where generally small government people, and I think you're sort of in that group too, our limits are being pushed on what small government actually means. And for me, I would always prefer a private answer to this in competition, but maybe there has to be a sort of two-pronged approach where politicians are putting pressure and then public people are putting pressure.
Because competition is not kicking in.
Well, I love this. This is so incredible. I mean, Jesus Christ. Okay, no, wow. He is really so dumb. So first of all, Tucker Carlson is absolutely not at least positioning himself brand-wise as a libertarian. In fact, Tucker Carlson has made many provocative comments, including recently going through sections of Elizabeth Warren's economic plan and her 2003 book, The Two-Income Trap, to talk about any number of economic populist proposals that he's at the very least willing to pretend to support. He said to Ben Shapiro, I don't believe in the market as some type of religious force. And if I knew that automation was going to eliminate some disastrous amount of jobs, I would regulate against it. That is totally anti-libertarian. And then when you combine that with like the plays to like the old folks about how like try having a conversation with a teenager on pot. that does not fit with the whole like, ooh, I'm a libertarian. I don't care if a conjunction of Monsanto, Bayer, and Microsoft owns the planet, just so long as you could smoke a little pot or whatever ways that they do like their fake like 1970s groovy points on.
No.
So Rubin doesn't even know the basics of where he is. Then there's like the deep point that these are communications commons, and obviously you can't leave it into the hands of Silicon Valley. That is the appropriate democratic response to it, the opposite of an actual libertarian response. So what Rubin, though, is doing here, and I think is actually sort of, especially by his standards, and he's not, I don't doubt he's doing it intentionally, but it's kind of clever. He's still saying, like, this basically should be a private market mechanism because I'm a mouthpiece for corporate America. But what we should do is we should have more hearings where idiots and fascists and demagogues like Steve King are just like, go to Facebook, comms teams and say, like, is this a page that tells kids that it's all right to be gay? Well, I'm wondering why the same page that says they should slit their wrist is not getting top of the algorithm. That's what he means by public pressure.
Where politicians are putting pressure and then public people are putting pressure, and we can maybe make these companies sort of be a little more transparent, be a little more open, which really is all anyone's asking for here.
I got a feeling
that's such a great freeze frame.
Yeah, I got a feeling that if
Tokyo listening to this,
if YouTube did what we think it should do and just ban people who launder white supremacists and were transparent about not accepting that, like that knitting website that recently did that. Did you hear about that? They're just like, we're kicking off all Nazis, and everyone's like, I guess you can just do that.
Yeah.
Then I think Rubin would still have a problem with that because he would probably get swept up in that.
Yeah, I think Rubin, and I don't think changing the title from Racing IQ to Controversial Opinions, ooh, that's an idea. I don't think that would do so well. And I also don't think it would do so. I also think if you did what these companies need to do, which is you had an actual human editorial process, I don't think that would bode so well for him either. And I also think in any society where any decent number of people across the political spectrum still understood that eugenics and racism and things like that were bad things and undesirable, and you didn't need to be like a woke lord to understand that, I don't think Dove Rubin is going to bode too well in that society either.
I'd bring them to heel by force tomorrow. I wouldn't. The libertarian solution, I think, we're past that time. And would you allow a power company?
There you go.
To say we're denying you electricity because you voted for someone we don't like? Of course, we would not allow that.
Well, I think that's
the utilities
I think that's
exist
a totally
because the
valid
government allows them to.
Yeah, I think that's a totally valid argument.
Look,
as my friend Eric Weinstein says, it's like one day are we going to get to the point where our Republicans are going to be allowed to have phones in their homes? I mean, that's sort of where we're heading with all of this. My preference would be that these companies, through public pressure, will move. But you might be right, and I think that's just an incredibly rich debate that we should be having more often.
Deplatformed by the phone company.
He's so fucking
great
stupid.
To see you.
Tucker. I will confess I didn't watch the whole clip, but I had to do that whole work to explain Tucker's politics, and Tucker did that for me much more brutally than I've ever done it.
Yeah, no, he's a big government paleo-conservative.
And by the way, I agree. I'm on that side of the debate. These companies need to become public utilities. They need to be heavily regulated, and I absolutely do not trust any process in the long term that Silicon Valley companies are in charge of deciding these things. That is insane. And even if they make short-term decisions that are positive and we may like, and by the way, most of the short-term decisions they've made are horrible. In fact, there's a reason the algorithm has helped feed the growth of these kinds of channels and content. That's a fundamental danger to media and democracy. They cannot be in Silicon Valley's hands. They need to be in public hands, period.
I think Tucker and us kind of understand that equally on some level. Like, we don't have an issue with YouTube controlling the kind of speech that's on there. We both understand that it's a vehicle for ideology. He just wants it to be a vehicle for white supremacist ideology, and we want it to be a vehicle for, liberation and whatnot.
Of course, but the fundamental regulatory question, yeah, I agree 100%. And it is really funny just to watch Dave just completely not like, and I love how that's always his move, which is like, well, that's a rich conversation. That's another thing that clearly I have actually no understanding of, but I love to pretend that I'd love to explore it.
I want to shout out a really good video by Sean, YouTuber Sean. I think a lot of people probably have heard about him before.
Sean's good.
He did a "What is White Supremacy?" a response to Steven Crowder video, and this little section on Dave Rubin building bridges with people like Laura Loomer I thought was very, very funny. Or scary, I don't know.
Both.
Then what? Well, you would agree that some of it.
Returning to Lauren Southern, however, she would appear to disagree.
Then
to collect identical. Returning to Lauren Southern, however, she would appear to disagree.
Then what? Well, you would agree that some of it exists, right? Like there's something there somewhere that's true.
Yeah, even the Richard Spencers of the world, like they're kind of misrepresented as well. Like Richard Spencer is not a white supremacist. He is a white nationalist. He believes in a white ethno-state. He doesn't believe in whites being superior. So
Richard Spencer is not a white supremacist, apparently. He's a white nationalist, according to Lauren Southern. However...
And I don't identify as a white nationalist, just to let that be known. History is often a zero-sum game. History is often about subordination and domination. And it's about patronage and so on. And if we want to try to get away from that in order to be ideologically pure, like, oh, every ethnicity will have its little state, we're not going to really go anywhere.
There's Dave. Dave's
wow, that's
building
so
bridges.
interesting. That's so interesting. He wants an ethno-state, but not a white, because I could live, like, just because I have my own house doesn't mean I think I'm better than other people. That's so interesting.
Oh, sidebar.
That is such a great illustration too, because I just, clearly he has no problem and he has no ethics, and he's in addition to being incredibly stupid and funny, is obviously a very bad person, but he has no problem, building a platform that's leveraged by having people like Laura Southern and Molyneux and so on.
That's how he's made his money.
That's how he's made his money. And don't forget, Sam Harris has drearily supported him every step of the way. And been a regular as well. But now that it's a two-step game, because on one hand you need to scream from the hilltops about censorship, but now it's a lot more like, hey, Ben Shapiro on, right? Like he's gonna be trying, and the retitling the video name and all of that, he's gonna want that to escape down, the memory hole. So, this is a good time for people who like to do that sort of internet-based having fun like that, to just do, steady reminders, especially when Dave is like whining to the CEO of YouTube. You could drop in those threads before, and I'm sure he'll block you, but you could also forward it to people like us.
Yeah, because he can't block us.
He can't block us. We will share, this is the type of thing that Dave thinks is super important that we're clear about online, which is telling, uninformed 14-year-olds that there's a profound intellectual difference between supporting an ethno-state and being a white supremacist. Thank you, Dave. Very important intellectual work. Appreciate that.
All hands on deck in the posting wars right now.
Well, exactly. And we are literally taking money out of their operations pockets by doing things like saying, hey, Buttigieg, don't go on this white supremacist launderer show.
Right. 100%.
And actually, this is what Sam mentioned this, but when he announced he was going to do a book, and we said we're going to flood the algorithms so people know who he is, mission accomplished.
He's writing a book. I don't understand. Sometimes it's still the simple things with him. That he actually? I mean, look, writing a book is pretty friggin' hard. I mean, writing a book, the idea of him composing an email about ideas.
No, I just picture like business cat sitting at the computer, kind of pawing at the keyboard.
Ideas, the left. I mean, Jesus Christ. And it still hasn't happened. I mean, it's amazing that they couldn't. Yeah, it's hilarious. All right, you're calling from an 817 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Oh shit, is this me?
Yeah, it's you.
Oh, hey, what's up, Michael? This is Alex from Arlington, Texas.
Hey, Alex, what's on your mind?
Big fan of So I was calling to talk about, I'm actually a type 1 diabetic, and there's been a lot of news lately about insulin prices, which is really good that it's in the news, don't get me wrong. But I wanted to point out to a lot of people some important stuff going on with that, because I don't think it's getting a lot of press.
Okay.
So a couple weeks ago, Eli Lilly, who manufactures insulin, announced that they were going to be making a supposedly cheaper alternative for people who are on lower incomes or who have to pay out of pocket can afford, and that they were going to be shipping this out to pharmacies, and it's going to be great. It's going to fix everything. We don't need Medicare for all or whatever. The problem is that a bunch of diabetics on Twitter following. If you guys don't know, Laura Marston is doing some really great advocacy for Medicare for all.
Laura Marston, okay.
And lowering insulin prices. Yeah, Laura Marston. Kid Fears 99 on Twitter. So there was a question, or sort of an open thread a couple days ago. A bunch of diabetics across the country went to their pharmacies and asked if they could get this, cheaper insulin. And literally none of them could. Across the country, from Texas to the Northeast to the Pacific Northwest, nobody could find it. All the pharmacies said, we don't have it. Some of them were like, well, we can order it, but it will cost $1,500, which of course defeats the entire fucking point. And so they got all this good press for supposedly coming out with this wonderful, cheap insulin that would help everyone out. And they're not even, it's all just a lie, essentially. Right. And people, they're not getting called out for it.
Well, I think it's this is the combination of you have, I was talking to my friend Luke Mayville about who put Medicaid expansion on the ballot in Idaho. And he was saying you have these places where you're lucky if you still even have a town newspaper and there's maybe one person or two people on staff. And Koch brother money is across the state. There's arms of PR teams that will send a press release. So I think this might be another example of that type of thing, that it's, between the just decimation of media, the power of PR, and also, the lack of maybe kind of a scientific understanding of some of these things, is a big problem. So just say the person's name again, the woman's name that we should be following.
Yeah, absolutely. It's Laura Marston at Kid Fears, KIDFEARS 99. If you're type 1 diabetic between, I think, the ages of 21 to 26, you should DM her. There are apparently journalists looking to talk to people in our cohort, so that's super important. If we can get our story out there, maybe that will bring some more attention to this. Because, this is life or death for us.
Absolutely.
Literally.
Yep. Appreciate the call.
Thanks, man.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Oh, gosh. I'm sorry. I have to call back in again. Can you take it down, Matt? I'm sorry. So a lot of athletes have refused to go to the Trump White House for obvious reasons. But I don't think that anybody who's put their lack of interest to going to the White House so succinctly. In France, the World Cup is going on right now, right? Where Meghan Rapinoe, she's a incredible player for the U.S. soccer team. She was asked about her excitement, which is a funny way to frame this question, about going to the White House. And she had a very economical answer.
Are you excited about going to the White House?
I'm not going to the fucking White House. No, I'm not going to the White House. We're not going to be invited.
You're not going to be invited?
I doubt it.
I love it, although I wouldn't have even added the we're not going to be. I'm just no.
Yeah, whether or not they're invited, they're not going.
Not going.
Fair enough.
You're calling from a 404 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Hi, this is Christian from Atlanta, Georgia.
Hey, Christian. What's going on? What's on your mind?
Hey, really pumped I got the call in. This is my first try.
Oh, welcome.
Love the show.
Thanks.
I'm actually calling in regards to a caller you guys had on Monday. Her name was Priya, and she was calling in regards to her family who held like the right-wing beliefs.
Yep.
And it made her very uncomfortable.
Right.
And after that, you had another call who said that the solution was to ostracize the family, which I have to disagree with because I have personal experience with this. My grandmother has pretty conservative beliefs. She gets them from, watching Fox and Friends and listening mostly to Rush Limbaugh. So the way I see it is that our family members that have kind of become this way are really victims of propaganda. And you don't really ostracize victims because if you do so, they're going to take it personally and they're going to dig in their heels and feel like they're personally being attacked. So they're going to retreat farther into their far-right beliefs as a security blanket, basically, as to not feel like they're the bad guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, to be honest with you, I can't, I don't have a huge amount of time for these conversations. Not like, no offense. I mean, one, because I think in Priya's instance, and this is where I'll even draw a slight distinction, she was even saying, and obviously they're very close on the continuum, but she wasn't even talking about somebody being quote unquote conservative. She's talking about being a non-white person who's adopted into a white family of a lot of people who are embracing openly and overtly racism under Trump. And that is an incredibly difficult thing to deal with, right? Like, and I don't think you and I could put ourselves in that position. And then the other thing, I mean,
no.
I'm not in the business of telling people, I'm not big on that type of thing. Be friends with who you want to be friends with. Don't dissociate from your family.
We're not Stefan Mullen.
Yeah, right. This isn't some fucking, weird social shit. Spend time with who you want to spend time with. I think there actually is, particularly just even in a brand way, it's healthy if the left has a reputation of like people who can like deal with people and aren't like puritanical nutcases who are always kind of like freaking out. But on the other hand, on the flip side, dude, I don't know what to tell you. Like, I'm sure your grandmother's a lovely lady, but I don't know if I'm actually not, maybe this is where I'm conservative. I'm not so terribly excited about calling everybody a victim all the time either. Like, people have agency over their politics. They have agency over what they want to embrace. They have agency over different things. And, I'm not sure how much you got to bend over backwards for them. I mean, there's sometimes you're in a stasis with people. There's people I know who I'm really good friends with, I'm really tight with. And I'm just like, that in certain areas, like, yeah, I think you're an asshole. And you maybe think the same about me. That's fine. That's part of the complexity of life. But you can't indulge it, and you can't get on these wild goose chases either. I think people get really obsessed with like, how do we bring somebody back from the right or something? A lot of people are just going to be there, and maybe and then hopefully they'll either maybe soften it a bit or they'll age out or whatever.
At the same time,
this is where I've had success.
Yeah.
Go ahead, yeah.
If you do have the energy to engage, like, we're not going to tell you how to relate to your family. Like, that's your business. If it's too much for you, you don't want to deal with them, don't deal with them. But, if you do have the energy to engage, it's probably going to be really hard and discouraging most of the time. But I've found I've made a little bit of headway just by trying to get people to empathize with the people who are affected by these kinds of policies as if they were their friends and their family. Because a lot of these people, they have complicated politics that don't necessarily make sense. Maybe they have a black friend who they really, really like, but then they can watch horrible racist stories on the news and feel racist towards all the other black people. Just try to personalize it, like what if it was your friend Joe, something like that.
This is actually what happened on Monday, because we were driving up from Orlando, and I actually have had success with her by putting on you guys, Majority Report.
Oh, awesome.
And it's kind of crazy because I see from her, like, half the stuff that she hears from you guys, she just didn't know was a thing. And one of the crazy things is we were listening to your entire Monday show, and it was so weirdly coincidental that it was on the topic of the children on the border in the concentration camps. And she was parroting a lot of the things that you hear on Fox and Friends and, regular conservative news. And then you guys played the clips of the elderly people in the diner that basically said exactly what she said, and it was really shocking seeing her kind of being her beliefs parroted back to her and just laid bare from these other people. And then that in tandem with Pira calling in and talking about, you know, these essentially elders in your family that have these same sort of hostile, toxic beliefs. That's where I just see success in. You don't have to bend over backwards for your family. People are going to have the beliefs that they have, but I think that, you know, a lot of it is just because you need to, I think, educate yourself as a person so that when you are confronted with this sort of stuff, and I can't speak for her when, you know, she called in, I can't attest to her experience. But, you know, just with my own personal experience, things like you actually just played a clip from Sean, the YouTuber.
Mm-hmm.
Channels like that act as fact checkers and counterpoints to these far-right messages that are on YouTube and in the media work wonders. Like so many people, like ContraPoints.
No, it's okay. Yeah, no, I got it.
success.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. So that's great.
Yeah.
If somebody's receptive to that, that's terrific.
Heck
And
yeah.
absolutely. All right, thanks for the call, man.
Last question.
All right, real quick.
All right.
Real quick. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, you guys mentioned that you were into the DIY music scene in Brooklyn. I was wondering if any of you were a fan of Jeff Rosenstock.
I know of Jeff
Jamie's
Rosenstock.
I have not.
You actually do, Brendan?
Yeah,
I've heard
he's
some of his stuff too.
He's in like the Chris Gethard like scene and all those guys.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, I highly recommend him. He has a great album called Worry that deals a lot with the existential horror of Trump being elected in 2016. So check it out. Jeff Rosenstock. Thanks for the call,
man.
guys.
Appreciate it.
It's always social, by the way. Like, if you're outnumbered like 11-1 to MAGA people, you're not going to be able to convince a single one of them.
Right.
But if you get them like in a car and then can point to a well-produced podcast that makes opinions, then it seems like they're socially outnumbered. It's never going to be you as an individual. You're going to need. It's going to be you and whose army, basically.
Or bring them to a super cool party. Like, I never really thought that my party organizing abilities were all that important politically. I'm like, well, you know, we need to have fun sometimes when we're doing socialism all the time. But I heard from a guy the other day, actually, who used to be alt-right, and now he's in the DSA. And he said one of the reasons was because he likes our parties, and our parties are better. So there you go.
I'd keep an eye on that guy.
Yeah, I was gonna say, sounds like a super durable person. Wayfair, which is they do furniture.
Yeah, it's like a furniture app or something.
Furniture app. They got a contract to work to provide furniture for these detention facilities where children are dying after being kidnapped by from their parents in the obscene assault on refugees and migrants by this administration. All solidarity with Wayfair employees who are protesting and begun a walkout today. Let's play this footage.
Good job, Wayfair.
Good job.
Yeah.
Solidarity with Wayfair
Political
workers.
strikes
This
are
is awesome.
so important, and it's so exciting to see them happening right now in solidarity with immigrants and in direct contradiction of the people who say, oh, anything that doesn't directly benefit any given worker is not something they're going to care about.
Bernie Sanders, I want to say, one of the other ways in which his campaign is distinct and in a different league is that they've been using their email list to support non-direct campaign things and empower striking workers, people fighting to save abortion and reproductive services in states where draconian legislation is being passed. This is not only the right thing to do and distinct in a campaign, it's a strategic choice that Sanders decided very early on to go in. 2016 was, as Ryan Grimm points out, it was a very traditional campaign in some ways. It was distinct because the donor base was decentralized and people-powered, which is a huge difference than relying on corporations and wealthy people. However, once the money came in, you fund ads, you have certain grassroots operations in certain states. This campaign, they've chosen to focus in a much more broadly grassroots direction. And a major part of that is doing things like using the email list to highlight things that aren't simply even campaign matters at times. That's totally unprecedented, and nobody else is doing that. So it's a fascinating play and potentially a big risk, for being honest. And in light of that, this is a report in Vox. Bernie Sanders is using his massive email list to warn immigrants about ICE raids. Quote, hours before Donald Trump's administration was set to send out its quote-unquote deportation forces, thousands of Bernie Sanders supporters in and around 10 major American cities received a campaign email, but it wasn't about asking for money. ICE raids are targeting 10 cities start Sunday. Know your rights, the subject line of the Saturday morning email read. The Sanders campaign used its campaign voter data to send out the same distress signals grassroots immigration advocacy groups typically organize around. Attached to the Sanders email were 2 graphics, one in English and one in Spanish, and a list of immigrants' rights guidance based from the American Civil Liberties Union. It's an unusual move for a presidential campaign to use its platform to do this kind of organizing, said Ruthie Epstein, the ACLU's deputy director of immigration policy. The ACLU played no role in the Sanders campaign email, nor did Epstein know it existed. Sanders' campaign manager, Faz Shakir, formerly worked for the ACLU, however. It's not strictly on point when it comes to building out a presidential campaign to use data for that purpose other than for running for president. But this isn't the first time the Sanders team has used its email and phone list for organizing people indirectly linked to his presidential ambitions.
It's kind of cheating to use a mail-in list for like information people want to hear and not just solicitations
Right.
and stuff like that.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
I should only be asked to give money on email lists. I don't want to.
Right. I don't want to
know what's actually going on.
I don't want to know what's happening
I just
in this
wanna
country.
Don't send me
drain my
something
bank
useful.
account.
Right.
Ugh. It's ridiculous. These progressives and all the things they want to get done.
I will
just
say.
ask for my money.
Just
That's
ask for
good
money.
enough.
Jesus Christ. I just want to order something on my Wayfair app and contribute money.
Take my money so I
Yes.
can go back to brunch.
I will just say, it is very satisfying to give Bernie Sanders money.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And then that's when we save the immigrants, and that's when the No Woman for President campaign goes into full effect. If I've got to save some kids in order to keep that from happening, then by God, I'll do it.
Ugh. People's delusional hatred of Bernie Sanders is disturbing, weird, fucked up, and actually sort of anthropologically fascinating. Here is Sebastian Gorka with Matt's favorite.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Did you know this, Matt?
I didn't even recognize him.
This is
From that
somebody.
angle.
This is Matt. Do you want to explain who this gentleman is? This very fit-looking guy in a blue shirt.
This is a man who has achieved a modicum of success. His name is Boris Epstein. Boris Must-Run Epstein of Sinclair Media. The guy who does short packages saying, Mr. Trump is doing his best and people aren't giving him enough credit.
Donald Trump does moves that are provoke. However, proof will pudding. And that is Iran. Thank you. And about 15 people, 45 people watch them a video on YouTube. And as I always say, look, if you're What Do You Mean, as an example, which is a very talented Australian YouTuber that we plug. If you are a grassroots YouTuber, you have no networks, you're reaching out, you're building, you have 10 people watching your video, awesome. You have 50 people watching your video, very good. You have 100 people, it's an accomplishment. But if you are part of a national cable network and you got like 45 people watching your videos, sad. Very bad performance. Here's Sebastian Gorka and Boris Epstein.
But what about the latest thing? Now we have this whole thing for the last 10 hours about they don't have toothbrushes. This is, we have somebody on Fox, and we'll talk about him in a second, saying this is equivalent to transgressing the Geneva Conventions. Buddy, if you don't want children not to have toothbrushes, How about the children that are dying in the desert, 3 of them with their mother, because there is no wall and because a coyote promised to smuggle them to America? How about not having anybody make that trip, not be raped, not be abused, or die in the desert? The priorities are just upside down, aren't they, Boris?
Aren't they, Boris? I'm a big believer in the Geneva Conventions. I learned it from Dad. I mean, obviously it goes without saying, stop terrorizing Central America
The wall
through
would not
backing
stop
right-wing
this.
governments. Yeah.
The idea that
This
the
isn't
wall is
stopping
what's
it.
causing this is just, or the lack of a wall.
You're kidnapping children and they're dying in custody and it's not stopping it.
And people are saying, don't go to the border, don't go to the designated points because they will put you in cages and shit. And that's why they're going
And that's a
to the
new
desert.
business opportunity for the coyote.
And a little bit behind. I don't know if it's because he's not a politically commissioned officer anymore. But Gorka's behind the talking points because Trump is saying they need to change asylum laws and things like that. So it's not really about the wall, Gorka.
It's indeed.
It's always about the wall.
Well, let's actually play that. This is Donald Trump saying that the border conditions are worse under Obama, and actually tipping his hand here, like Matt said, about what it's really about.
Are you personally concerned about the conditions at these border facilities?
Yes, I am. I'm very
reports-
concerned. And they're much better than they were under President Obama, by far. And we're trying to get the Democrats to agree to really give us some humanitarian aid, humanitarian money. And that is a very fair question. And I appreciate that question. But I'm very concerned. It's in much better shape than it ever was. A lot of these young children come from places that you don't even want to know about, the way they've lived, the way they've been, the poverty that they grew up in. But with
Sounds like they're refugees that we should allow into the country.
I was going to say, I totally share your empathy, Donald. And I
think I do want to hear
I think
about
these
it,
are
though.
people we can actually help very
the
easily.
poverty that they grew up in. But with that, if we can get this bill signed, we'll be able to do it. We have, the Democrats don't want to sign anything. And now I think they're going to probably sign this, from what I understand. I call it humanitarian aid.
Yes, the border was terrible under Obama. Of course, it's worse under Trump. We could say this by the evident fact that multiple children have died under Trump. This is this is what he's got in 2020. This is the play. He's going to do fake economics populism for sure, particularly if it's somebody he can do that against. But the bottom line is that he ran on a combination of a totally dishonest, totally non-systemic, but at times totally correct critique of things like trade agreements and oligarchy, and xenophobia and racism. And he's got xenophobia and racism because his economic agenda is the Republican economic agenda, which is oligarchic. And I know we repeat this every single time, and I've said this so many times. I said this going back to playing clips of Paul Ryan in the summer of 2016, where Paul Ryan literally was like, don't worry about what that dude says. When this idiot is president, we're going to feed through deregulation and tax cuts. And we're going to have more pollution in the water. And we're going to give more money to rich people. And we're going to destroy people's health care. We're going to make this country poorer, sicker, and dumber. That's our core brand proposition. This guy has a hypnotic relationship with a large part of the Republican base because this is the reason that they're Republicans. And therefore, refugees, children, people fleeing situations whose origins are in things like the drug war, are in things like supporting coups and paramilitaries in these countries, are in things like sweatshops and imbalanced trade agreements. That's the origin and context of why somebody is fleeing conditions that are so bad that they would still go to deal with this regime in the United States. And those people need to be terrorized because that is the path to salvaging 2020. That's it. And anybody else who says otherwise, tries to make it more complicated, is dumb, full of shit, or that's basically
Delusional.
Or delusional. That's one of my favorite words, as we all know. Delusional. You're calling from a 760 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from? 760, are you there?
Hey, Michael.
Hey.
Hey there, Michael. It's Kentucky Fried Comrade. How you
Hey,
doing, bud?
what's on your mind? I'm good. What's on your mind?
So I'm pretty sick right now. I'm kind of hopped up on NyQuil, but I got 2 comments. One on Meghan McCain.
Yes.
Meghan McCain has been the biggest force to make me like anti-troop that I've ever been, because like I don't know. I just got on this thought process. It's probably the NyQuil speaking here, but like, look. I'm just saying, if the Vietnamese had taken a harder stance against POWs, maybe we wouldn't have to deal with.
Whoa! All right, this is like
hot take. I'm here for it.
I can't co-sign on that one.
Just out there.
There are people who went through that torture and then went home to be great anti-war activists. So they didn't all produce Meghan McCain
true.
and warmongering Senate careers.
That's true. That's true. But the actual thing that I called in to talk to you about is you did something that I found really offensive, and I needed to call you out on it.
Mm-hmm. Oh God. Yes.
Good order to this call.
Yeah.
I know I'm the guy who got suspended from Twitter for a week for saying like kill all gamers, but you insulted gamers, and I wanted to come at this from a very specific direction.
Yes.
Because I actually do work in the video game industry. There's actually a lot of really interesting labor relations questions that on my podcast In Too Deep, we plan to do that next week.
Everybody with the plugs.
But
glass houses.
It's all about
absolutely. Well, actually,
but
glass houses. Are you fucking kidding me?
I encourage plugs.
You are the queen.
I plug myself
Yes.
and everybody else.
No, you're right. Plugs are good. So keep plugging Kentucky Fried.
But next week we plan on doing an episode of some sort on kind of like video games, not necessarily video games themselves, but the production of them. And when I say there's like labor-related questions, I mean like real labor-related questions of complete rampant sexism in the industry, absurd contracts. For example, there's one company that I can't name due to contractual reasons, but there's one company that only allows people to work 140 days out of the year.
Yep.
And that has to be contiguous to maintain their independent contractor status, and that's so they can't like offer them certain benefits.
Right.
All kinds of like weird, absurd, almost Machiavellian shit. But
Totally, yeah, Machiavellian. No, I agree. No, and actually Sanders recently came out for something to do with labor rights in gaming. I know. No, we look forward to In Too Deep. Subscribe and feel better, Kentucky Fried Comrade.
It's a huge industry, so we really can't ignore it in terms of labor.
And also, just to be clear, when I make condescending comments about video games, I'm not talking about laborers. I'm talking about those who play them. Jesus Christ. Socialismo. Michael, I have my doubts, but once I hear you speaking Portuguese, I'll know that Skillshare works.
Get on it.
That's such a good burn. Oh, please don't. I would not base. Buttigieg is too white to be true. I think I made this line on TMBS where I said that when he did his sit down with Al Sharpton, it looked like the only other black person he met besides the guy he fired.
Then he met Jesus and Mero. Drinking a 40 in a park.
Please stop. I like
picture.
Mero.
Hey, actually,
that's why I did not watch
They've been hijacked by CBS.
Hey, Showtime. Showtime, listen in. Stop ruining. Yeah, Viacom. Not Viacom. Viacom. Stop ruining Jesus and Mero by making them talk to lame-ass politicians like Pete Buttigieg and Kirsten Gillibrand.
Word. Gillibrand and Buttigieg are the opposite of them, and you're killing it.
Like, it's like, one day they're going to talk to Wu-Tang Clan, and then the next they're talking to fucking Pete Buttigieg. Like, stop forcing guests on them. Let them have who they want to have on.
Stop.
And where's Bernie? Where's Bernie been?
No, seriously, where is Bernie? He is a fucking New Yorker. The whole, I mean, look, I know that they're all about the Bronx, but if they can, at least there's a New York connection. At least there's a connection also with like an actual person, an actual leader, not some like
let Bernie
synthetic
give them,
garbage like Buttigieg.
Let Bernie give them like a 1940s tour of a tour of 1940s Brooklyn or something like that.
Yeah, show him where he used to play basketball.
Play basketball together.
Ooh, yeah, he's got game. I gotta
It does.
say.
It's better content.
You don't have to do brand outreach to like girls that were in sororities at liberal arts colleges.
Yeah, guys.
Like it's just not necessary.
Honestly,
Totally not
No, you have
necessary.
the rest of the mainstream media for that.
If Viceland could give them the freedom to put on 4 shows a week that were way better than the trash that you're putting out, I mean,
seriously, and also no offense, guys, but I mean I love them, but stop with the sketches. Seriously.
We're just flaming these New York comedy writers right now.
Not good.
Hey,
not good.
It's
I
tough
mean,
stuff. It's tough stuff.
It's a tough deal.
You don't want to end up like what's his name, Jimmy Fallon.
Don't want to end up like Jimmy Fallon. We
You don't
all
wanna
know
end
how
up like
great
Jimmy
Bodega
Fallon.
Boys was. Don't ruin it. Don't ruin it with Harvard kids with comedy packets. Don't do it. Great leap forward. A great leap forward. A doctor who visited the concentration camp says it does resemble a torture facility. JB, taking a parents away from toddlers is torturing toddlers. The Republicans' intent is to be cruel to them. I'm okay with people calling them torture facilities. Me too. I totally have no problem with it.
Kids
I'm
lose
just
their
saying that
shit.
she the point was that she went to something that has been used well. There has been, through the efforts of people like AOC, to say in the mainstream, no, we are going to call them concentration camps, which isn't even polemical. That's objective. Some people, so that is what, but she went and took it even further to what fewer people are saying as part of her narcissistic pivot to talk about her dad.
Like it's legit traumatic for a kid's parents to go away for even a few hours. Like we've all seen that. So like you can't even imagine what this is like for them.
It is torture. It's absolutely torture. Of course it's a torture policy. Yesterday in Brazil, there was a Supreme Court ruling that was just, I mean, basically it was 2 petitions for habeas corpus, which has been denied to Lula da Silva from the beginning because in the Brazilian system, basically, you're supposed to remain out while you've had all of your appeals. But because this is a political prosecution and because the goal of this prosecution was to keep him out of office and keep him out of the 2018 elections, this evidence-free conviction was rushed, and then he was jailed and silenced without his appeals. This was pre-scheduled, but of course, now this is in light of the leaks and the reporting from The Intercept, which show, again, what was always analytically obvious is now empirically validated, which is that the Lava Jato team was corrupt, politically motivated. They themselves knew that the case they put Lula in jail for was incredibly weak, tenuous, and so on. Tenuous to their supposed mandate. So he continues in prison. By the way, in light of the bigger story here, I mean, obviously calling to free the world's most prominent political prisoner is a pretty big story. But this bigger question of the misuse of corruption rhetoric as a tool of fascist governments. I will just say, Bolsonaro, whose whole brand and was supported by people like Ian Bremmer, who said he might, be the one, despite having some toxic masculinity, to clean up Brazil. Just hours ago, a Brazilian airman on the president's travel team was arrested at a G20 summit on cocaine trafficking charges. So I'll just put that out there as maybe an example of some actual action. And the government that the Davos set like Ian Bremmer has so much faith in, even though they're so disturbed by the homophobic comments and so on. So this Lula story, again, it's vital because every candidate needs to join Bernie in calling to free Lula. It's vital because just as there was work in Congress spearheaded after the assassination of Berta Cáceres in Honduras. Cáceres, excuse me. But she was an incredible leader who was assassinated in the context of a regime that the Obama administration supported a coup that got rid of Manuel Zelaya, who was another good center-left leader. That this corruption rhetoric has been used to politically persecute the left across Latin America, has put innocent people and a great leader like Lula in jail, and has, in its upshot, produced extreme far-right governments that practice extravagant corruption and, of course, are subservient to all U.S. interests. I want to play this clip from a rally before Lula turned himself in to this absurd mandate, and he said that these people and, Sergio Moro, the corrupt prosecutor and judge who put him in prison, is Bolsonaro's justice minister. This should have been the tip-off from the beginning, but that they were going to be, the world was going to know who they are. And I just wanted to play this because it's moving, especially in light of what we know now and the fight we need to continue.
Não, eu não estou escondido, eu vou lá na barba deles, para eles saberem que eu não tenho medo, para eles saberem que eu não vou correr e para eles saberem que eu vou provar a minha inocência. Eles têm que saber disso.
And again, this, as he said recently, he said, I'm obsessed with unmasking Sergio Moro. Well, this reporting is unmask it. And Sergio Moro was just visiting the United States, meeting with intelligence and justice officials here. Don't fall into the corruption rhetoric trap. If you aren't talking about inequality and capitalism as part of a structure of corruption, you're going to get led down a fascist path. We see it. United States, drain the swamp. We see it in Brazil. We see it in India. We see it in Hungary. This is the global pattern here. And it was weaponized in Brazil to destroy and take body blows against the largest left-wing party in the Western Hemisphere, and a party that we actually have a lot to learn about. I want to say a funny random side anecdote. I read the John Lee Anderson piece about Juan Guaido in the New Yorker. And in addition to having an astrologer, which is cool, Guaido just comes off in the piece. And Anderson he's a good reporter, but his politics are very meh. But Guaido comes off in the piece as just basically totally out of his depth and not sympathetic, but totally out of his depth.
Like a Beto O'Rourke type, maybe?
Kind of, actually. And so there's this really funny part, though, because it just links right to both the extreme politics of the United States and the pedantry of the debates we have here. But I guess he was on Fox, and he just he didn't really know who AOC was, and somebody brought up AOC. And he says to John Lee Anderson, yeah, I wasn't really familiar with her, so I Googled her after. And he's like, she's more what we would call a social democrat here. She's not a Chavista at all. It was so funny. He's just yeah, she's not that radical.
I mean, fair enough for the rest of the world.
That was really funny.
For here, she's quite radical. I just love when I saw the report that Trump gave up on the coup in Venezuela because it was boring and difficult.
That was
or something.
And also that Maduro's a tough cookie. He started to give him begrudging credit.
But it just gave me so much pleasure to imagine Guaido reading that.
Juan Guaido. Well, I think if you read this profile of Guaido, I think Guaido might have some sympathy for that. I hear you, bro. It's much harder than I thought. No Bumps in the Road. The People's Republic of Walmart's a really important book that's well-researched and filled with good detail. The interview a few weeks ago with the authors didn't really cover the brilliance of the book. No fault of Sam's. The authors were just not hitting their points well. The book does. It's really fascinating. Every socialist needs to read it. It's on my list. Let's see. Matt, this is for you, I think. Thanks for the good work. Michael, can you recommend any leftist socialist YouTubers for us? And also, everyone hit the like button. Matt, you were just talking about this.
I mean, I've got a thread of them. There's Timba.on.toast. There's Sean. There's Philosophy Tube, Philosophy Cuck, ContraPoints, obviously. You already mentioned what do you mean especially if you're an Australian.
Yes.
Let's see, what else is there? I don't know. That's the ones.
Zero Books. Huh? Zero Books is a great channel, and I want to do this one last piece of sound.
Oh yeah, I really like Ben Burgess's videos on there.
I love all of I love Burgess, obviously. I love Lane. They're great. And I would say I mean, but obviously, I mean, I'm sure people assume. Anna has her own no filter channel, Anna Kasparian. I would check that out. That's really good. I would also check out
Some More News by Cody Johnston.
Some More News by Cody Johnston. Novara Media is on YouTube.
Means TV.
Means TV.
Surfs TV.
Oh yeah, the Surfs. The Surfs are awesome. I just did a sit down with them. Oh, and I really like David Dole's Rational National.
Oh yeah, I always shout out to that one because I always feel bad for when he called in and I assumed he was a right winger based on the name of his show.
And there's also Peter, whose name I'm totally spacing. Peter Coffin. I like Peter Coffin. Okay. Let's see. But I don't watch much politics on YouTube, I will confess.
I recently started
I stream France 24 and Al Jazeera.
So I recently got the YouTube Premium that allows you to save things for offline use and close your phone screen. That was really the main reason I paid whatever $10 a month for it now.
Wow. That's how to get you.
But it basically turns those long form YouTube shows, which people are getting so good at producing that stuff.
They really are.
It turns them into podcasts I can just listen to on the way to work.
Yeah, really. You know what? I have to keep hitting listen to Zero Books. And that's relevant here because we have a clip of Dennis Prager, whining about YouTube censorship. And I want to go use this as a launching point to talk about actual YouTube censorship.
Well, this is not new. They have been for a while. We're actually in a lawsuit with regard to Google, which owns YouTube. For example, we produce 5-minute videos. 4 prime ministers have made videos for us, and 3 Pulitzer Prize winners, liberal professors, conservative professors.
He always definitely sounds like he has food in his mouth. All right, I'm sorry.
Also, Holocaust deniers like Owen Benjamin and people like that.
Yeah, people like that.
About as mainstream conservative as exists. And these are educational videos. We have 1 billion views a year. Most of the viewers are under 35. So we're a big force in the world of what we believe. And Google, which owns YouTube and Facebook and Twitter and Spotify and basically all of the media of internet communications are run by people who do not want us. By us, I don't mean only PragerU. Us who are not on the left to have a big voice. So, for example, they have placed about 80 of our 400 videos. They're all 5-minute videos. They come out every week. They have placed about 8 of them on the restricted list. So if you filter pornography, you cannot get Professor Alan Dershowitz speaking about Israel's founding. You cannot.
Explain that.
That's right. Oh, explain it. It's very simple. If it's pro-America, if it's pro-Israel, if it's pro-religion, it's likely to be censored by Google, YouTube. It's a phenomenon. I did a video on the 10 Commandments. It's on the pornography restricted list.
Well, I have to say, from reading some of Prager's editorials, I'm less surprised than he is. But here's the thing. He may or may not have a few on the restricted list. And I'm sure that if Alan Dershowitz has one on the restricted list, it's because Alan Dershowitz advocates an extreme hard-right ethnocentric view of Israel and the Middle East. But there's one video that was actually taken down, unlisted completely, beyond this demonetized. And that was a video by Zero Books where Ben Burgess, who we know, does these debunks on my show. He does logic videos for Zero Books, and he wrote this book called Give Them an Argument, Logic for the Left. And he took a video apart where Ben Shapiro essentially assaulted American Jews for being critical of Israel, essentially said that there was one hard right view of Israel you could have, or you're self-hating or anti-Semitic. That video was unlisted, was put in a thing too that even when you clicked on it, it had a warning around it. It went to apparently a review process because it was appealed because there's nothing. I mean, it's a basic politics video. And it was still put in a restricted status. So the lesson here is that, first of all, we know that in the big picture that there's, the Stefan Molyneux, Dave Rubin brains video never got subject to any of this kind of treatment. I don't even know. It might even still be monetized, right? So we know that in the grand scheme of things, that actually far-right content was facilitated and fed by the YouTube algorithm and not targeted until potentially very recently. And then the other lesson is that, yes, these companies are completely inequipped to make decisions like this. It is a threat to press and open discussion of every kind. And it is perfectly demonstrated by the fact that they're just filtering for the title Israel or American Jews. They're making no analytical assessment whatsoever of a rational, well-articulated video that dealt with the merits of the issue at hand, because they don't care about it and because they don't choose to invest in the capacity to monitor it, which is why they need to either be heavily regulated or made public utilities, because it is, in fact, a very big threat to openness and content creation, press, and media. So, but of course, Dennis Prager wants to turn it into some fantasy about Google being run by Hezbollah or something.
If only.
Who is? Do we have a sense of who PragerU is funded by? Like what kind of corporate interests are funding PragerU?
I think it's some fracking guys. Pretty sure it's some fracking guys. Yeah,
Okay.
and I think that's covered in the second plug I'll give his YouTube channel of the day. Sean, he has 2 videos that are really good. How PragerU Lies to You. That's got 1 million views.
Oh, great.
And How PragerU Lies to You, the British Empire. That was only 3 months ago. That's about 500,000 views. So check those out. Very good.
Very cool. My Sean is always watching videos from that Sean.
Let's take the final call of the day. You're calling from a 502 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Hello?
Hello, 502. Are you there?
Hi, this is Paloma, and I'm calling from Kentucky.
What's your name again?
Paloma.
Paloma. Hi, Paloma. What's on your mind?
Hi. It's great to listen to you guys every day. Just a side note. I was kind of thinking about, I don't know how long ago this was, but I remember there was a clip where Nancy Pelosi had actually admitted to, or claimed that the general Democratic people do not want anything to change. And with her recent remarks in regards to just mentioning impeachment and criminality and all, it just got me wondering that, I mean, could it be possible that their lack of action taking could be strategic, so that they could have somebody who can be bought and paid for to get in office, because it's a worst case scenario of trying to get Trump out?
I'm not sure I totally follow that. What?
I mean, I think I think there are certain candidates. I think Biden, that's his bet, for instance, that people are just going to be over. But
okay,
but
I see, yeah.
I will say this: I do not think that the Democratic Party can coordinate that comfortable that strategically. I don't think they have that kind of control over the candidates like that.
So you don't think that it's possible that they're just trying to get some random mediocre candidate in office because everybody feels it's safer to go against Trump with a mediocre candidate?
Well, I think they are risk averse, definitely. I think that's Pelosi's problem.
Well, and I think, the kind of bigger thing in the other clip is, Nancy Pelosi is not on the left, and she doesn't have a, interest clearly in things like Medicare for all, or, radical responses to the climate. I do think when it comes to stuff like impeachment, I think it's more just tactical timidity. And I do think that, yes, there's a lot of people, particularly in the establishment. I mean, some of it is because they have just different ideology and interest, absolutely. But I think there are, there's plenty of people that legitimately think that Hillary Clinton was the safe choice or Joe Biden is the safe choice and not impeaching Trump is the good play. Yes, definitely.
Yeah. Well, I think that it contradicts what happened in the last election. They went for the worst possible candidate, the most extreme candidate on the Republican side. And I think that it's pretty stupid for the DNC to not consider the possibility that us going for the exact opposite extreme would be bad for us.
I don't. Yeah,
You know what I'm saying?
I totally agree with you, but I think that that's also where their like incentive structure, comes into play. They don't want to, hear that argument. Thanks for the call.
There's risk aversion and ideology, right? Like, I think there is a very strong case to be made that Bernie Sanders is the best candidate to beat Trump. I think he is actually a stronger candidate than Joe Biden in many ways, but there could be like twice as much evidence or 3 times as much evidence, and they would still never, ever go for him.
Yeah, there's a different interest, ideology, and incentive structure. And again, the Democratic Party is not really a party. It's a set of conflicting interests that would be several different entities in another context. Rube Devon. What I've read is that conversing directly with people you disagree with does not work in getting them to your side, but it does have an effect on the bystanders listening. That makes a lot of sense. Okay, sorry again, no more calls. We'll read a couple more IMs. Contagious Chameleon. Props to the guy forcing his grandma to listen to Majority Report. Yeah, no doubt. Megan Rapone is a boss. Still takes the knee during the national anthem. Wow, that's dope. Let's see.
Nasty women.
Nasty women. Let's see. And the final IM of the day.
Her name reminds. I was gonna say her name reminds me of something I should be charged with.
Winnipeg Greg. Dole from the Rational National is from Canada, but he mostly does the same American content that you get from something like TYT or Secular Talk. Christo Avalis is hyper-focused on Canadian politics, is actually an academic, and has great political instincts. Well, I love David Dole, and I will check out Christo Avalis, who is apparently a great leftist YouTuber for Canadian content. Tonight...
Just do one request on that line. I also want recommendations for YouTubers who aren't either white or male, because my list is very white and male. So
I want any European or African, or if there's anything that's global. All right, folks. Tonight, starting at around 8:50, we're going to start streaming tonight's debate. Sam is so excited. He's texting us. He's like, I want everybody here, and then we're going to have to be here, and then there's going to be pizza, but we're going to listen. It's so exciting. It's debate time. All right. See you tonight.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow